Chapter 336. The Empress Dowager was anxious to get Han Yunqing's good thing. She was originally sick, but now she was full of energy. There were still several places on her body that were itchy. She scratched them casually and didn't pay attention to them. How could Han Yunqing take out her good thing so easily? She sneered in her heart, "Your Highness, my good thing can't be used casually. I have to take a look at your body's condition first. Jia is tormented by insomnia. Not only can't sleep, but my whole body is also sore." The Empress Dowager complained and took the initiative to take Han Yunqing's pulse. Han Yunqing casually took her hand. "Judging from your Highness's pulse, you must have undergone acupuncture for several days?" Imperial Physician Chen had not returned to the palace, so how could the Empress Dowager know what happened to Imperial Physician Chen in the Duke of Qin's manor? She secretly admired Han Yunqing's ability. Although this girl was proficient in the art of poison, her medical skills were not weak. She knew that she had undergone acupuncture just by taking her pulse. "And, what's wrong? Did you use the wrong needle?" The Empress Dowager asked slowly. Gu Beiyue was kneeling at the door. Han Yunqing was here, so she was not anxious with them. "That's right. Judging from your Highness's pulse, this needle was used very well. It won't be sore. What medicine did your Highness take?" Han Yunqing couldn't wait to take Gu Beiyue away immediately. She wouldn't give the Empress Dowager too much time. The Empress Dowager immediately asked Nurse Gui to bring the prescription over. The prescription was written by Imperial Physician Chen, and Gu Beiyue had also taken a look. She wanted to see how capable Han Yunqing was to see the problem with the prescription. Han Yunqing didn't look at it seriously. She just glanced at it and suddenly shouted, "Io! Not good. What's the matter?" The Empress Dowager didn't think so. Han Yunqing exhaled a long breath. "It's troublesome. It's troublesome." Although she knew that Han Yunqing was probably just acting, the Empress Dowager was still a little nervous when she saw Han Yunqing's serious expression. She quickly asked, "What's wrong? Is there a problem with this prescription?" "There's no problem with the prescription, but if it's used together with my good stuff," Han Yunqing wanted to say something but stopped. Empress Dowager was anxious. "What? It can't be used anymore." She had been searching for the medicine fan for so many years, so she naturally knew that although it was a fan, it was also a medicine. It couldn't be used carelessly. When Gu Beiyue started to give her acupuncture, he added Imperial Dr. Chen's medicine. Moreover, Gu Beiyue made it very clear that she must take medicine after acupuncture to avoid side effects. 2 days ago, she secretly stopped taking medicine, so her whole body was sore. She had asked Imperial Dr. Chen in private if there would be a big problem with the side effects. Imperial Dr. Chen said that it was just sore and not a big problem. She had originally thought that Han Yunqing would use the prescription to absolve Gu Beiyue of his crime, but who would have thought that the prescription would actually affect the medicine fan that she had been longing for? It would be strange if she wasn't nervous. "Empress Dowager, did you really take this prescription?" Han Yunqing frowned and looked very serious. "I really did." The Empress Dowager grew serious as well. "This." Han Yunqing's face was full of worry as she muttered to herself, "It's going to be troublesome." The medicine fan she had longed for over a decade was about to be hers. If she couldn't use it because of a problem like this, wouldn't the Empress Dowager feel stifled to death? She was truly frightened by Han Yunqing's words. "Yunqi, just what happened?" "It's very troublesome." "Empress Dowager, how much medicine have you used so far?" Han Yunqing's solemn face emanated an aura of authority that no one dared to defy. The Empress Dowager didn't even think before replying truthfully, "I started with acupuncture and used 3 days. I used acupuncture and moxibustion for the next 2 days, but I didn't use any medicine." At this moment, Han Yunqing exhaled. "So that's how it is. Just what happened? Tell me." The Empress Dowager was anxious, and so was Gue Mama on the side. Esteemed Wang Fei, don't sigh anymore. Hurry up and tell us, just what happened. Unexpectedly, Han Yunqing's worried expression suddenly changed into a resplendent smile. There's no problem since I didn't take any medicine for the last 2 days. It's very fortunate, Empress Dowager. Then that's good, the Empress Dowager exhaled and smiled at Gui Mama. Both master and servant rejoiced. Han Yunqing's eyes flashed with icy light as she said coldly, Esteemed Empress Dowager, Imperial Physician Gu must have told you that you can't stop taking medicine during acupuncture and moxibustion, or else it'll cause your entire body to ache. You stopped taking medicine for 2 days and even had Imperial Physician Gu kneel outside for 3 days and 3 nights. Isn't that inappropriate? At these words, the Empress Dowager's smiling expression changed. She finally realized that she'd been tricked by Han Yunqing just then. She angrily slapped the table. What a Han Yunqing, you dare to trick me. Han Yunqing was not afraid as she stood up. How did this concubine trick the Empress Dowager? The Empress Dowager was speechless, not knowing what to say. She never thought that after struggling in the harem for so many years, she would fall into the hands of a maid like this. The Empress Dowager was not willing. However, Han Yunqing's trap was set very well. She could not find any loopholes, so she could not refute it. Esteemed Empress Dowager, since Imperial Physician Gu isn't wrong, shouldn't you let him go? Han Yunqing asked again. Although she had fallen into Han Yunqing's trap, the Empress Dowager was not easy to deal with. She coldly said, This widow found Gu Beiyue to treat my insomnia. If he doesn't have the ability to treat it, then he can only kneel outside. Esteemed Empress Dowager, if this concubine remembers correctly, Gu Beiyue's grandfather treated the Empress Dowager in the past and gave her a prescription called the medicine fan. Han Yunqing coldly said. So what if he did? The Empress Dowager knew that Han Yunqing had done her research. She knew that Han Yunqing had deliberately taken out the medicine fan at the birthday banquet. The prescription has already been given. It's the Imperial Pharmacy's responsibility that the medicine wasn't found. What does it have to do with the doctor who treated the patient? Han Yunqing pressed on. The time she wasted here was Gu Beiyue's life. When she saw Han Yunqing's cold expression and sharp gaze, the Empress Dowager couldn't help but think of Long Fei Yi. Although the two had different temperaments, they were very similar when it came to serious matters. Today, she had truly witnessed Han Yunqing's eloquence and was completely speechless. However, she quickly pointed her spear at Han Yunqing. Han Yunqing, what kind of tone is this? How dare you speak to this widow like this? Han Yunqing ignored her arrogance and coldly said, Esteemed Empress Dowager, the good thing this concubine is talking about is the medicine fan, but this concubine came in a hurry and didn't bring it with her. How about the Empress Dowager find someone to go back with this concubine to get it? The Empress Dowager had waited for so long and done so much just for Han Yunqing to say these words. The unhappiness from before was thrown to the side and she couldn't hide the pleasant surprise in her eyes. She quickly said, Nurse Gui, go back with the Princess Consort. Since Imperial Physician Gu isn't guilty, can he also leave? Han Yunqing asked again. The Empress Dowager only wanted the medicine fan. Moreover, Gu Beiyue had already knelt for 3 days and 3 nights, so she didn't want to cause any more trouble and delay things any longer. Let him leave, otherwise this widow will feel annoyed just by looking at him. She waved her hand in disdain. Han Yunqing's eyes flashed with cold light as she suppressed her anger and turned to leave. As soon as Han Yunqing left, the Empress Dowager scratched her arms and legs again. Very soon, the itchiness disappeared without a trace. She didn't notice anything strange and was waiting with all her heart for Nurse Gui to bring back the medicine fan. Han Yunqing rushed towards Gu Beiyue as soon as she emerged and hooked his arm over her shoulder to help him up. Gu Beiyue's entire body was limp and weak. He didn't have any strength left, but he still tried his best to speak. Esteemed Wang Fei, you can't. Shut up. Han Yunqing scolded unhappily. This guy's already so weak, but he's still not saving his strength. What's he blabbering for? Chu Shifeng watched from the sidelines, at a loss for what to do. Zhao Mama chased after them and rushed forward to help. Esteemed Wang Fei, let this old servant do it, let this old servant do it. Chu Shifeng recovered his wits and rushed forward. He was strong enough to snatch Gu Beiyue from Han Yunqing's hands and support him firmly. At the same time, Gu Beiyue, who'd been holding on, finally fainted. Zhao Mama silently exhaled. Thank goodness His Highness didn't see what happened just then. Otherwise, both she and Chu Shifeng would be in trouble. Soon enough, Zhao Mama saw Gu Beiyue's face. His gaunt features were so pale that they were turning purple. His lips were completely colorless. His features were clear and handsome, but his face was so still that it seemed like he'd never wake up again. Zhao Mama couldn't help but feel pained. Just how did this child manage to kneel for 3 days and 3 nights? Even a man like Chu Shifeng couldn't bear to watch any longer. He took off his outer robes and draped them over Gu Beiyue's shoulders. On the side, Han Yunqing's eyes had long turned red. She looked coldly into the room and said, "Let's go." Honorable Empress Dowager Li, what do all those years of insomnia count for? Your nightmares have only just begun. Han Yunqing directly took Gu Beiyue back to the Duke of Qin's estate and settled him in one of the guest rooms. A page boy immediately helped him change into clean clothes, only to discover that both of his knees were bruised. She left Gue Mama to wait in the guest hall while Han Yunqing took Gu Beiyue's pulse. Then she wrote a prescription for Zhao Mama to boil it. Judging from his pulse, Gu Beiyue had not only caught a severe cold, but starved himself to death. His body's energy was almost depleted. It wasn't a great loss of vitality, but a serious injury. This was the first time Han Yunqing had taken Gu Beiyue's pulse so seriously. She discovered that this fellow's body was very, very weak. Just as he'd said, he was a medicine jar. It was impossible to imagine how such a weak body had managed to hold out for 3 days and 3 nights. While waiting for the medicine, Han Yunqing ignored Gue Mama and used acupuncture on Gu Beiyue to drive away the cold and preserve his vitality. Lil Thing had been sneaking out to play for the past few days. As soon as it reached the gates, it smelled its familiar scent and was overjoyed. It shot like an arrow towards the guest room. However, when it excitedly flew in through the window and saw the young master lying unconscious on the bed, it was immediately stunned. It stood there for a long time before rubbing its eyes. When it looked again, it rushed over and ran around Gu Beiyue, squeaking non-stop. Don't be noisy. Han Yunqing was very fierce. Lil Thing immediately shut its mouth. Its face was filled with confusion as it sniffed Gu Beiyue's body and looked at Han Yunqing. It had just sent medicine to the gentleman a few days ago. How did it become like this? The gentleman had been seriously injured for so long. Even if he had recovered from the medicine, his body would still need a period of time to recuperate. Who could tell it what had happened? Squeak squeak. Lil Thing suddenly cried out. Didn't I tell you to be quiet? Han Yunqing angrily reprimanded with a terrifying seriousness. Lil Thing pursed its lips and sat by the side to watch. As it watched, tears slowly flowed down. Gentlemen, what happened to you? Can't you smile a little? Chapter 337. Lil Thing didn't dare to disturb Mama Yunxi anymore. It sat quietly on one side and watched as Mama Yunxi inserted each needle. After a long, long time, Mama Yunxi was finally done, but the gentleman still didn't wake up. Lil Thing wiped its face with its meaty paws, wiping away its tears before jumping off the bed and disappearing like a wisp of smoke. Soon enough, it returned with a large bag of medicinal ingredients and poured them all out by the gentleman's side. Han Yunqing was currently resting by the bed, frightened by Lil Thing's actions. Lil Thing actually hid so many precious medicinal ingredients, including the extremely rare serpent fruit. Serpent fruit was one of the ingredients in the prescription to treat mute Granny's broomcorn millet poison. Judging by the environment in which it grew, only 3 fruits could be found in all of Cloud Realm continent. She never expected Lil Thing to have one hidden away. Han Yunqing was shocked, but found it normal. After all, Lil Thing had lived for so many years that it might have hidden this serpent fruit a long time ago. The exhausted Han Yunqing reached out to pick up the serpent fruit. Seeing this, Lil Thing immediately stood up with wide eyes. Lil Thing, your pile of things can't save Gu Beiyue. We can only wait until he recovers before we give him something to nourish his body, understand? This serpent fruit can't nourish the body, but it can save others. I'll take it first, Han Yunqing explained gently, a completely different person from before. She was in a rush just then and hated to be disturbed while she was using needles. Lil Thing didn't blame Mama Yunxi, but it didn't understand what she meant. It thought the serpent fruit could save the gentleman. When it saw Mama Yunxi put the serpent fruit in her sleeve, it grew unhappy. It jumped onto Han Yunqing's arm and scratched with all its might. Han Yunqing had no choice but to take out the serpent fruit again and shake her head at Gu Beiyue. Lil Thing finally understood and resentfully jumped off the bed to curl up by Gu Beiyue's side. Zhao Mama, take care of the medicinal ingredients, Han Yunqing instructed. Granny Zhao picked up all the treasures, but the little thing didn't even look at them. It curled up beside Gu Beiyue's big hand and rubbed its little head against the back of his hand before burying itself again. It was so sad that it couldn't see young master's smile. Han Yunqing watched and frowned helplessly. Why did this little thing hit it off so well with Gu Beiyue? Since the first time they met, he was already unafraid of strangers. Little thing, don't worry. His life won't be in danger. He needs time to recover, Han Yunqing said calmly. Gu Beiyue's injuries were too severe. Not only did he need power, he also needed sleep. Perhaps fainting was a good thing for him, but he needed to replenish his food and water. Esteemed Wang Fei, the medicine is cold. Let this old servant feed him. Granny Zhao said in a low voice, her heart heavy. At this moment, Chu Shifeng entered. Esteemed Wang Fei, Gui Mama's throwing a tantrum. Mother Gui had already waited for almost 2 hours. Let her wait, Han Yunqing said coldly. Back in the palace, the Empress Dowager hadn't been in a rush. Now here, she wasn't. None of His Highness Duke of Qin's subordinates were afraid of trouble. Chu Shifeng grinned. All right. He was about to leave when Granny Zhao called him over. Come and help him up. Only she and esteemed Wang Fei were in the room, so Granny Zhao was worried that esteemed Wang Fei would do something improper again. Fortunately, Mother Gui had come out late from the Empress Dowager's palace. Otherwise, heaven knows how the rumors would spread. Chu Shifeng understood with a single glance from Granny Zhao and sent a page boy to deal with Mother Gui. Gu Beiyue was in a severe coma, so it was difficult to feed him medicine. It took Granny Zhao and Chu Shifeng a long time to force a few mouthfuls into his mouth. Han Yunqing had finally calmed down, but grew anxious again. I'll do it. She reached for the medicine in Granny Zhao's hands, but the latter quickly dodged. Esteemed Wang Fei, calm down, calm down. You're so stupid. Give it to me and I'll feed him. Han Yunqing urged. Granny Zhao didn't dare. Esteemed Wang Fei, all patients are like this. This old servant has experience, so let this old servant do it. What nonsense are you spouting? How much have you only fed him after half a day? Han Yunqing fumed. Unexpectedly, Lil Thing suddenly jumped onto Granny Zhao's arm and sucked up the entire bowl of medicine. All 3 of them were stunned. What was Lil Thing doing? They watched as Lil Thing jumped onto Gu Beiyue's body and bent down to feed him. Lil Thing fed him very, very slowly, but not a drop of medicine came out. Han Yunqing and the rest were stunned by the sight. They never expected Lil Thing to have such skills. By the time Lil Thing finished feeding him the medicine, an hour had already passed. Its head was almost numb, but when it saw that the young master's complexion had recovered a little, it was extremely happy. It jumped onto Zhao Mama's arm, wanting more medicine. "Granny Zhao, quick, pour some warm water and instruct the kitchens to boil some rice soup," Han Yunqing hurriedly ordered. Gu Beiyue needed medicine and food. At this time, he could only drink some rice soup. Eating too much or eating anything nutritious would be counterproductive. Granny Zhao immediately left, but Lil Thing foolishly followed her to the door before realizing that something was wrong. It immediately turned back. Why did it follow her? It had to guard the gentleman. Just like that, they all guarded Gu Beiyue, leaving Granny Gui hanging in the guest hall. Imperial Physician Chen was also kneeling in the guest hall. The Empress Dowager was waiting in the palace and had sent several people to urge them, but they were all rejected by Han Yunqing with one reason. Han Yunqing said, "Go back and report to esteemed Empress Dowager that His Highness has the medicine fan. This concubine can't find it and will have to wait for His Highness to return." In reality, Han Yunqing had brought the medicine fan with her when she entered the palace. At this time, the medicine fan was placed in Gu Beiyue's guest room. The Empress Dowager was so angry that she smashed things in the palace. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have let Han Yunqing go back. But how could there be so many earliers in this world? She could only have Granny Gui wait. Granny Gui waited until night fell, and Han Yunqing finally showed her face. Granny Gui anxiously asked, "Esteemed Wang Fei, it's already so late. Why isn't His Highness back yet?" Han Yunqing had an innocent expression. "His Highness went on a long trip and will only be back in a few days. Didn't I tell you?" Granny Gui had been waiting for an entire day and had a belly full of anger. Hearing this, she flew into a rage. She couldn't hold back for a moment. "Esteemed Wang Fei, you're doing this on purpose. Impudent." Han Yunqing coldly said, "You dare to speak to this Wang Fei like this?" These words sounded very familiar to Granny Gui. It seemed that the Empress Dowager had said the same thing to Han Yunqing in the Heavenly Palace. Granny Gui immediately regretted it. It was a pity that her reaction was too late. "Someone come, drag this audacious servant out and punish her with 50 paddles," Han Yunqing coldly said. Before beating a dog, one had to look at its owner. Before starting the Empress Dowager's nightmare, Han Yunqing wanted to slap her old face first. "Esteemed Wang Fei, please spare me. Esteemed Wang Fei, this servant was wrong. Esteemed Wang Fei, this servant doesn't dare anymore. I beg you to spare this servant just this once." Granny Gui shouted as she was dragged out. Her pleas didn't work, so she gave a warning. "Qin Wang Fei, this old servant has served the Empress Dowager for over 30 years. If you dare to touch a single hair on this old servant's head," before she could finish speaking, the manservant's paddle came down and Granny Gui's clamor turned into a blood-curdling scream. Ah! Imperial Physician Chen, who was kneeling in the room, trembled in fear when he heard this and didn't dare to make a sound. Granny Gui was beaten until she was half dead. Han Yunqing threw her and Imperial Physician Chen out of the door. By the next day, news of the incident had spread throughout the capital city. Just like last time when the Duke of Qin had punished the Emperor's most favored servant, Eunuch Shui, the news spread like wildfire. Although it didn't have as much influence as Eunuch Shui's case, it at least made people realize that Qin Wang Fei wasn't someone to be trifled with. When news reached Long Fei Ye's ears at the distant Tang clan, he nodded in satisfaction and said, "Well beaten." Of course, he secretly sent someone to tell Chu Shifeng to keep an eye on Gu Beiyue. The Empress Dowager was so angry that she almost fainted. She had to take 3 heart pills in a row before she recovered. She wanted nothing more than to tear Han Yunqing to shreds, but Han Yunqing had a good reason for beating people up without leaving any evidence behind. The Empress Dowager waited for 3 days. Because of this, her insomnia worsened. Normally, she'd fall asleep in the second half of the night, but these 3 days, she couldn't sleep until morning. She was utterly exhausted, but couldn't fall asleep. The more she lay, the more her head hurt. When she got up, she was listless and miserable. Finally, on the fourth day, she couldn't take it anymore. Someone come, prepare a sedan chair. I'm going to the Duke of Qin's estate. Hateful Han Yunqing. If I don't teach her a lesson, will she really think the Empress Dowager is so easy to provoke? But just as the Empress Dowager was about to leave, Han Yunqing showed up. She was only trying to anger the Empress Dowager a little. How could she really wait until Long Fei Yi returned before taking out the medicine fan? Everything had to be done in moderation, just like tormenting this old thing. She had to keep her hanging without completely provoking her. Of course, the most important thing was that if she didn't give her the medicine fan, how could she start her nightmares? As soon as she heard the eunuch's report, the Empress Dowager immediately went back to her bed and straightened out her clothes. She also adjusted her emotions, looking as calm and composed as ever. She was rather surprised by Han Yunqing's arrival, but felt that it made sense. After all, she was the Empress Dowager, while Han Yunqing was only a princess consort. Ha, she finally knows that she's coming. Aijia will be waiting. As soon as the Empress Dowager finished speaking, Han Yunqing walked in. She was as calm and composed as usual, natural and unrestrained. This concubine pays respects to Your Highness the Empress Dowager. Greetings to Your Highness the Empress Dowager. Quickly rise. The Empress Dowager smiled kindly. Regardless of age, women competed in ruthlessness, refinement, and patience. In this case, the one who held her ground to the end would win. As soon as Han Yunqing rose, the Empress Dowager had her sit down. Aijia thought that you would only come to see Aijia after the Duke of Qin returned. How could that be? Han Yunqing smiled faintly. Is Your Highness the Empress Dowager feeling better? Weren't these words poking at the Empress Dowager's sore spot? The Empress Dowager's heart burned with anger, but she still maintained a pleasant expression. Much better. Did you sleep well? Han Yunqing looked concerned. The Empress Dowager's hands clenched into fists within her sleeves, but her expression was still amiable. Much better than a few days ago. Han Yunqing was very satisfied. Then that's good. Last night, when I was straightening out His Highness's clothes, I saw something. Esteemed Empress Dowager, can you guess what it is? As Han Yunqing spoke, Zhao Mama walked forward and presented an object wrapped in a red envelope. The Empress Dowager knew that Han Yunqing had come to deliver something, but she still couldn't help but feel moved when the object she'd been waiting for was right in front of her eyes. As the Empress Dowager, she was still human. This. The Empress Dowager was moved. Esteemed Empress Dowager, take a look, Han Yunqing was still smiling. Impatient, the Empress Dowager lifted the red cloth. Chapter 338. The Empress Dowager couldn't wait to lift the red cloth, only to see what she wanted the most, the medicine fan. This medicine fan was oval-shaped and made of extremely fine, high-grade white silk. Its handle was made of precious ivory and decorated with purple tassels. Every part of the medicine fan was extremely valuable, but none of them could compare to the two sides of the fan embroidered with fragrant grass on one side and purple lilies on the other. Fragrant grass was the most effective medicine for insomnia, while purple lilies were meant to sober the mind. Even the most severe cases of insomnia would be cured by the medicine fan. Moreover, it was easy to use and had no side effects. This was something that drinking medicine and acupuncture couldn't compare to. The Empress Dowager loved it so much that she couldn't help but lean over to take it. But Han Yunqing beat her to it and picked up the medicine fan. Han Yunqing leisurely fanned herself with the fan. Esteemed Empress Dowager, you recognize this thing, right? Of course. The Empress Dowager was very certain. Her gaze hadn't left the medicine fan at all. Suddenly, her neck began to itch, but it wasn't much different from a normal itch. She scratched it casually without taking it to heart. Esteemed Empress Dowager, Imperial physician Gu's grandfather prescribed you this fan in the past, right? Han Yunqing asked next. Han Yunqing had asked this question before, so the Empress Dowager nodded. It's this fan. Han Yunqing didn't hand it over immediately, but toyed with it in her hands. Esteemed Empress Dowager, do you know how to use it? I do. It has two sides, one for sleeping while the other sobers the mind. The Empress Dowager finally lost her patience. Yunshi, let me take a look. Han Yunqing glanced at the Empress Dowager's scratching hand with ridicule in her eyes. She purposely offered it with both hands. Esteemed Empress Dowager, please kindly accept it. The Empress Dowager picked up the medicine fan impatiently, as if afraid that Han Yunqing would go back on her word. She flipped the fan up and down and immediately smelled its medicinal fragrance with a look of enjoyment. Han Yunqing watched coldly as her lips curved into a mocking smile. Take your time sniffing, the best part is yet to come. Han Yunqing patiently waited for the Empress Dowager to smell enough before asking, Empress Dowager, is this fake? Hee, it's still Yunshi who has the skills. The Empress Dowager said meaningfully. It's real, isn't it? Han Yunqing needed an affirmative answer. She had to be ruthless in this matter, and she had to make sure that there were no loopholes for the Empress Dowager to cause trouble for her and Gu Beiyue. The Empress Dowager had never seen a real medicine fan before, nor had she ever seen real incense or purple lilies. However, she was very familiar with these things. She knew that they couldn't be fake the moment she saw them at the birthday banquet. The medicine fan was the only one in the world that could inscribe different medicinal herbs on both sides of the same fan. Furthermore, she just fanned the opposite side of the medicine fan, and the fragrance of the purple lilies had instantly dispelled the exhaustion caused by her insomnia over the past few days. Right now, she felt completely refreshed. It's not fake, it really is the medicine fan. The Empress Dowager generously gave Han Yunqing an affirmative answer. Although she'd suffered a lot of unpleasantness after obtaining the medicine fan and even missed the chance to make things difficult for Han Yunqing, she still secretly felt grateful towards Han Yunqing when she saw the treasure she'd admired for so long. After all, she'd been searching for this item for almost 20 years without any results. Although the Empress Dowager didn't want to admit it, it was the truth. If it wasn't for Han Yunqing, she probably wouldn't have found it in this lifetime. Of course, her gratitude only lasted for a moment. In the Empress Dowager's heart, she had to give the medicine fan to anyone who found it. That's good then. Then Qinxia won't disturb you any longer, Empress Dowager. After making things clear, Han Yunqing took her leave. The Empress Dowager didn't keep her for long, but let her go after a few polite words. As soon as Han Yunqing left, the Empress Dowager's hidden delight showed on her face. She was so happy that her mood instantly improved. She carefully stroked the medicine fan, then gently fanned it. She simply couldn't bear to part with it. She couldn't wait any longer, hoping that night would quickly fall so that she could test the medicine fan's effects and have a good night's sleep. When she fanned the medicine fan, she unconsciously scratched here and there. When Nanny Li, who had been newly promoted to replace Nanny Gue, saw this, she hurriedly asked with concern, Empress Dowager, what's wrong? Did you touch something dirty? Perhaps it's because it's just winter and my skin is too dry. My back is itching. Hurry and help me scratch it. The Empress Dowager said this while carefully examining the medicine fan, completely unaware of her body's abnormality. After Nanny Li scratched her back for a while, she stopped itching. Ever since Han Yunqing left, the Empress Dowager had been holding the medicine fan without doing anything other than waiting for the sky to darken. She'd been suffering from insomnia for so long that she'd forgotten when it was normal to fall asleep. After dinner, she and Nanny Li took a stroll around the imperial garden before returning. She specially took a hot bath and lay down on the bed early. Empress Dowager, let this old servant help you fan. Nanny Li volunteered. No need, you can keep vigil. It was likely that no one would be able to take the medicine fan away from the Empress Dowager now, so Nanny Li could only spread out the bedding and keep vigil on the ground. The Empress Dowager lay down lazily with a leisurely expression on her face, completely lacking the usual anxiety before falling asleep. She faced the medicine fan in front of herself and deliberately glanced at the incense before gently fanning herself. Following her movements, the faint medicinal fragrance of the incense gradually spread out and pervaded the Empress Dowager's surroundings. This fragrance had the miraculous effect of calming one's mind and relaxing one's body. Gradually, the Empress Dowager's movements became slower and slower. Her expression changed from leisurely to blissful, and then from blissful to hazy sleepiness. Not long after, she actually fell asleep. Her hand drooped and the medicine fan fell to the ground with a plop, but she still didn't wake up. Nanny Li watched in disbelief. She waited for a long time and only carefully picked up the medicine fan after confirming that the Empress Dowager had truly fallen asleep. That night, the Empress Dowager slept very deeply. She didn't even notice when she frequently scratched herself in the second half of the night. The next day, Han Yunqing had Nanny Zhao use some money to inquire about the Heavenly Palace. Esteemed Wang Fei, the Empress Dowager went to bed very early yesterday and slept all the way until dawn. Today, all of the servants in the Heavenly Palace were rewarded. Nanny Zhao truthfully reported. "Io, you're in such a good mood." Han Yunqing was also in a good mood. "How could I not be? Sleep is her life." "Esteemed Wang Fei, you're letting that old thing off so easily." Nanny Zhao was very unwilling. People often say that happiness is built on top of pain, but in reality, pain is built on top of happiness. Han Yunqing revealed a harmless smile. Happiness? Pain? What did this have to do with the medicine fan? Nanny Zhao was completely confused. "Esteemed Wang Fei, this old servant doesn't understand what you mean. Let's go ask around tomorrow," Han Yunqing said mysteriously. The next day, as soon as Nanny Zhao received the news, she couldn't wait to tell Han Yunqing. "Esteemed Wang Fei, the entire Heavenly Palace is in a state of panic today. I heard that even Nanny Li, who was recently promoted, was beaten until she was crippled. The Empress Dowager used the medicine fan last night and was about to fall asleep, but she was woken up by the itch. It said that her scalp was itchy and no matter how she scratched or washed it, it wouldn't stop until morning." Nanny Zhao was very excited. "Esteemed Wang Fei, did you do something to it?" Han Yunqing glanced over and said with a serious expression, "Bold servant, if you dare slander this Wang Fei again, I'll drag you out and feed you to the dogs." Nanny Zhao was stunned at first, but then she smiled. She understood. Pain is built on top of happiness. If she didn't let the Empress Dowager taste the sweetness of sleep, how could she experience the pain of insomnia? It was currently evening. In the Heavenly Palace, the Empress Dowager had just woken up. After tossing and turning all night, she could only catch up on sleep during the day like before. She had clearly used the medicine fan perfectly, but for some reason, her scalp had suddenly itched last night. If it was any other day, it wouldn't matter. She was awake anyway, so she could do whatever she wanted. But last night, she had used the medicine fan to make her scalp itch. When she was drowsy and had no energy at all, she had no choice but to scratch her scalp and wash her hair. How painful must that have been? The most painful thing wasn't that she couldn't sleep even if she wanted to, but that she couldn't sleep even though she wanted to. This was simply a nightmare. She had used the medicine fan perfectly, so the Empress Dowager didn't think that it was related to it. She found several imperial physicians to take a look, but none of them could give her a reason. Her hair had always been clean, and she had never had an itchy scalp in all her years. Moreover, her entire body was fine, only her scalp was itchy. The imperial physicians even went to study the food the Empress Dowager had eaten these past few days, but they couldn't find any allergens. Since they couldn't find the cause, the imperial physicians all waited in the Heavenly Palace, waiting to see what would happen tonight. The Empress Dowager tidied up and prepared to sleep early just like the first day she obtained the medicine fan. She gently fanned herself with the medicine fan and soon felt sleepy again. But who knew that just as she was about to fall asleep, her scalp would itch again. The Empress Dowager was extremely sleepy and her consciousness was drifting. She unconsciously scratched her hair and continued to sleep. But soon, her scalp itched again and she scratched it again. This time, no matter how she scratched, it was useless. Soon, her scalp itched unbearably like last night. Unfortunately, the Empress Dowager was so sleepy that she couldn't even open her eyes. Sleepiness and itchiness coexisted, so how could she not be in pain? Someone, the Empress Dowager weakly said, "Scratch it, quickly." The newly arrived Nurse Sue hurriedly came over to help her scratch the itch, but it was useless. Nurse Sue could only call for the imperial physicians. The Empress Dowager was very reluctant, but she had no choice but to get up and change her clothes. When the imperial physicians arrived, she leaned against the chaise lounge with her eyes half closed. She was so weak that she didn't even want to speak. After the imperial physicians examined her, they began to speculate. Some said it was a food allergy, some said it was a skin disease, some said it was a drug allergy, and some said it was poison. Unfortunately, there was no definite diagnosis. At this time, the Empress Dowager only wanted to sleep. She didn't have time to think. "Get out, a bunch of trash, all of you get out." She pointed at the door. Although she was furious, she didn't have the strength to throw a tantrum. That night, the Empress Dowager tossed and turned until dawn. She alternated between scratching her itch and washing her hair. The itchiness only subsided when the sun rose. The Empress Dowager was exhausted, but she didn't catch up on sleep. Instead, she ordered coldly, "Which imperial physician said that Ijia was poisoned last night? Send it in." No matter how stupid the Empress Dowager was, she could guess that something was wrong. This definitely had something to do with Han Yunqing. "Han Yunqing, if you dare poison me, you're dead meat." Chapter 339. Imperial Physician Lin, who had a close relationship with Imperial Physician Chen, guessed that the Empress Dowager was poisoned last night. He was also one of the Empress Dowager's confidants. "You diagnosed that Ijia was poisoned?" the Empress Dowager asked coldly. Of course, Imperial Physician Lin knew what the Empress Dowager was thinking. He said that she was poisoned because he wanted to point the finger at Han Yunqing and avenge Imperial Physician Chen. After all, Imperial Physician Chen knelt in the Duke of Qin's mansion for 3 days and 3 nights. Of course, the Empress Dowager's symptoms were indeed suspicious. Imperial Physician Lin was very cautious. "Empress Dowager, this official doesn't know much about poisons. Being poisoned is just this official's guess." The Empress Dowager was very displeased. "Useless things, why did Ijia raise you?" Imperial Physician Lin immediately changed his words. "Empress Dowager, this official thinks that you are most likely poisoned. To be on the safe side, it's better to ask a poison doctor to take a look. Which one of the people who made a living in the palace wasn't smart?" Imperial Physician Lin could tell at a glance that the Empress Dowager wanted him to point out Han Yunqing. However, without any evidence, he would be the one who would end up the most miserably if he said it. Han Yunqing wasn't easy to deal with, and the man behind her was even more difficult to deal with. Seeing the Empress Dowager hesitate, Imperial Physician Lin quickly approached and whispered, "Empress Dowager, this official knows a poison doctor who is skilled in poisons. Why don't we ask him to take a look?" Imperial Physician Lin looked at the Empress Dowager's expression. Seeing that the Empress Dowager wasn't disgusted, he lowered his voice even more. "Empress Dowager, don't alert the enemy." The furious Empress Dowager finally calmed down. Of course, she understood what Imperial Physician Lin meant. Han Yunqing had been framed multiple times over the past year, but she'd always been able to turn misfortune into blessings. Everyone had witnessed her skills firsthand. If they directly pointed the finger at Han Yunqing now, it would be easy for Han Yunqing to shift the blame with her poison skills. After all, none of the imperial physicians present knew poison skills. This matter could only be taken slowly. Once they had solid evidence, they could catch Han Yunqing off guard and directly put her to death. This is an opportunity. The Empress Dowager muttered to herself. The Empress Dowager is wise. Imperial Dr. Lin was secretly relieved. Quick, go and find that poison master you mentioned. I want to see him today. The Empress Dowager was very anxious. She couldn't wait to kill Han Yunqing. Of course, she was more anxious about her sleep. How could she sleep with her scalp itching like this? Previously, insomnia was just insomnia. Most of the time, he could fall asleep in the second half of the night. Occasionally, he could even sleep for a little longer. Now, as soon as he lay down, his scalp would itch, and he would be tormented the entire night until dawn. Nightmare, this was a nightmare. Imperial Physician Lin was also anxious and hurriedly excused himself to ask for help. That afternoon, Imperial Physician Lin brought the poison master into the palace. His name was Zhu Zhenyang, and people called him Elder Zhu. He was a rather famous figure in the world of poison. This commoner Zhu Zhenyang greets the Empress Dowager. Long live the Empress Dowager. Zhu Zhenyang bowed deeply to the Empress Dowager as soon as he entered the palace. The Empress Dowager hurriedly had him rise. Has Imperial Physician Lin told you about Aijia's condition? Yes, Empress Dowagers. Before Zhu Zhenyang could finish, the Empress Dowager was anxious. Quickly come and take a look. As the saying went, one who dared to provoke the lion was courting death. Since the Empress Dowager had said so, Zhu Zhenyang didn't decline. He stepped forward and carefully examined the Empress Dowager's hair and scalp. According to Imperial Physician Lin, the possibility of the Empress Dowager being poisoned was very high. However, Zhu Zhenyang didn't find anything after a thorough examination. Empress Dowager, may this commoner take your pulse? Zhu Zhenyang asked respectfully. The Empress Dowager immediately stretched out her hand without another word. Unfortunately, Zhu Zhenyang didn't find any poison after taking her pulse seriously. Zhu Zhenyang hesitated and secretly glanced at Imperial Physician Lin. Imperial Physician Lin didn't understand and hurriedly asked, Zhu Zhenyang, how is it? Empress Dowager, from your scalp and pulse, there are no signs of poisoning, but... The Empress Dowager hastily interrupted. Zhu Zhenyang glanced at Imperial Physician Lin again and said timidly, but if we take a blood test, we might find something. The Empress Dowager was frightened. Could it be that Aijia is poisoned? No. Zhu Zhenyang hurriedly explained, Empress Dowager, some poisons can't be easily detected. We have to do a blood test. The Empress Dowager was relieved. Then how much blood do you need? A small cup, Zhu Zhenyang answered truthfully. The Empress Dowager thought that pricking her finger with a needle and taking a drop would be enough. She didn't expect to need so much. Her face turned pale. Zhu Zhenyang and Imperial Physician Lin didn't dare to speak. The room was silent. In fact, anyone who knew a little about medicine and toxicology would know that taking so much blood meant that if the Empress Dowager was really poisoned, it must be a terrifying poison. The Empress Dowager was afraid, but she had no other choice. She frowned and said unhappily, then take it. Zhu Zhenyang didn't dare to do it. He gave Imperial Physician Lin a meaningful look. Imperial Physician Lin had no choice but to do it himself. He took out a small medical knife. Empress Dowager, please stretch out your index finger. Be gentle. The Empress Dowager's face was as worried as an old tangerine. She turned her head away, not daring to look. Imperial Physician Lin's hand trembled. He hesitated for a long time before he cut. Ouch! The Empress Dowager immediately cried out, her face scrunched up in pain. For the sake of her image, she forced herself not to cry out in pain. She thought that once the test was complete and the evidence was obtained, she would make Han Yunqing pay back 10 times over for this cut. The cut wasn't small, so a small cup of blood was quickly taken. Imperial physician Lin didn't dare delay and immediately bandaged the Empress Dowager's wound. Zhu Zhenyang, quickly examine it. Jia will wait. The Empress Dowager anxiously urged. Zhu Zhenyang was helpless. Replying Empress Dowager, the results won't be out until this time tomorrow at the earliest. What? The Empress Dowager couldn't hold back and blurted out, couldn't Han Yunqing detect the poison immediately? What's wrong with you? Zhu Zhenyang was both innocent and embarrassed. It wasn't that he wasn't capable, but that the Empress Dowager's poison was very likely a rare type. It wasn't that simple. He had been in the poison world for so long, but this was the first time he had taken so much blood for a test. Empress Dowager, your poison might be a bit more complicated. With this official's ability, I can't detect it so quickly. Zhu Zhenyang's explanation was fine, but who knew that he would hesitate and say, Empress Dowager, why don't we invite Qin Wangfei to try? At this time, the Empress Dowager would get angry at anyone who mentioned the words Han Yunqing. Zhu Zhenyang actually dared to say such a thing. In that instant, the Empress Dowager's expression completely changed. She shot an angry glare at Imperial Physician Lin. Imperial Physician Lin was also innocent. How could he dare to casually talk about the matters in the palace and the open and covert strife between the Empress Dowager and Qin Wangfei to outsiders? Even if Zhu Zhenyang was his good friend, he didn't dare to talk too much. He only told Zhu Zhenyang about the Empress Dowager's illness. As for Zhu Zhenyang, he had always been focused on studying poisons. How could he know about the powerful relationships in the imperial family? Faced with the Empress Dowager's murderous glare, Imperial Physician Lin silently lowered his head. Faced with Zhu Zhenyang, who didn't know the situation, the Empress Dowager couldn't vent her anger for fear of losing face. She could only forcefully suppress her anger and let it settle in her heart. The blood had already been taken. What else could she do? Someone, she ordered coldly, arrange a residence for Poison Master Zhu. She would wait. In order to obtain evidence to get rid of Han Yunqing, she was willing to endure another night of torment. After Zhu Zhenyang left, the Empress Dowager angrily rebuked Imperial Physician Lin. Useless thing, is this the formidable poison master you were talking about? Your Highness, the person who poisoned you isn't simple. Imperial Physician Lin hastily explained. The Empress Dowager agreed with this reasoning. Han Yunqing's poison was definitely not ordinary. She sighed deeply. She only hoped that Poison Master Zhu wouldn't disappoint her again. Looking at the sun in the west outside, the Empress Dowager's heart was filled with fear. Tonight was destined to be another sleepless night. She was afraid of washing her hair in the middle of the night for 2 consecutive days. In the Duke of Qin's estate, Han Yunqing waited for Gu Beiyue to wake up while inquiring about news from the palace. As soon as the sky turned dark, Zhao Mama excitedly came back with news. Esteemed Wangfei, the Empress Dowager was busy all night yesterday. I heard that she invited a poison master over today, but I couldn't find out the details. That's enough. Han Yunqing gave a cold smile. The Empress Dowager hadn't come to find her immediately, which was a smart choice. But unfortunately, her cleverness had backfired on her. When had she, Han Yunqing, ever fought a battle she wasn't confident in winning? Esteemed Wangfei, just what's going on? Why don't you tell this servant? Although Granny Zhao didn't know what the Princess Consort was up to, she had absolute confidence in the Princess Consort. With His Highness Duke of Qin's high standards, how could any woman he'd set his sights on be ordinary? Han Yunqing didn't reveal a thing beyond asking, when will Imperial Physician Huang be coming today? Tonight, Chu Tianfeng replied. Ever since receiving His Highness Duke of Qin's orders, he'd never left Gu Beiyue's room. Of course, Lil Thing was even more inseparable. Since esteemed Wang Fei wouldn't tell her, Zhao Mama could only wait to watch the show. Esteemed Wang Fei, when will Imperial Physician Gu wake up? Zhao Mama was still quite concerned. Han Yunqing had helped Gu Beiyue apply for sick leave and secretly invited Imperial Physician Huang to treat him. After all, she wasn't confident in her own medical skills. Imperial Physician Huang's skills were second only to Gu Beiyue's in the Imperial Physician courtyard. He was on good terms with Gu Beiyue in private, but few people knew about him. Han Yunqing had only discovered him after visiting the Imperial Physician courtyard a few times. With Imperial Physician Huang's treatment and Lil Thing feeding Gu Beiyue medicine, millet porridge, and water, Gu Beiyue's complexion and pulse improved considerably. Unfortunately, he still wouldn't wake up. Imperial Physician Huang wasn't sure when he'd wake up, but Han Yunqing was afraid that he'd never wake up again. Over the past few days, she didn't have time to do anything but watch over Gu Beiyue. That night, after Imperial Physician Huang finished performing acupuncture on Gu Beiyue, Han Yunqing personally saw him out the door. The entire way, they chatted in low voices. Even Su Xiaoyu, who was following behind them, had no idea what they were talking about. The night was still and silent, but one more person stayed awake in the palace. It was none other than Zhu Zhenyang, the poison's master. He'd been analyzing the Empress Dowager's blood for hours on end, but hadn't found any traces of poison. Early the next morning, he went to see the Empress Dowager. Esteemed Empress Dowager, as this commoner sees it, you might not have been poisoned, Zhu Zhenyang replied honestly. The Empress Dowager's fingers were still wrapped in gauze and throbbing with pain. Hearing this, she exploded. Zhu Zhenyang, you better explain yourself to me or else I'll have a bucket of your blood. Chapter 340. Poor Zhu Zhenyang. The Empress Dowager's bucket of blood scared him so much that his legs turned to jelly. At this moment, he deeply regretted accepting Imperial Physician Lin's invitation to serve this great ancestor in the palace. In reality, he was only 90% certain that the Empress Dowager wasn't poisoned. He wasn't sure about the remaining 10%. Based on his many years of experience in dealing with poisons, the Empress Dowager's symptoms were very similar to poisoning. However, he couldn't detect any poison in her blood even after repeatedly checking her multiple times. It could only be said that either she really wasn't poisoned, or he really couldn't detect the poison in her blood. Of course, Zhu Zhenyang didn't understand the power struggles in the palace, but he still knew that he had to protect himself. Since the Empress Dowager was so dissatisfied, he didn't dare to say that he wasn't sure even if he was beaten to death. Your Highness, based on your pulse and blood tests, you really aren't poisoned. Zhu Zhenyang had just said, not necessarily, but now he was so scared that he directly gave an affirmative answer. The Empress Dowager was so angry that her hair was about to burn. All of her attention was on the 3 words not poisoned, so how could she have noticed anything else? If she wasn't poisoned, she wouldn't be able to do anything to Han Yunqing. All of her efforts would have been in vain. Impossible, you must be poisoned. If you aren't poisoned, then what is it? Explain it clearly to me, the Empress Dowager demanded angrily. Your Highness, forgive this commoner for speaking bluntly, but your symptoms are very likely related to the medicine fan. Zhu Zhenyang spoke very tactfully. He still had some professional ethics and wasn't lying. In this situation, the possibility of the medicine fan being poisoned was much higher than the Empress Dowager being poisoned. Unexpectedly, the Empress Dowager was suddenly overjoyed. Zhu Zhenyang, you mean to say that the medicine fan is poisoned? If the medicine fan was poisoned, then it would be even more likely to point to Han Yunqing. Zhu Zhenyang was truly frightened by this temperamental Empress Dowager. He answered truthfully, Your Highness, that is possible. This commoner needs to examine the medicine fan. The Empress Dowager was very generous and immediately had Nurse Su bring the medicine fan to Zhu Zhenyang. Zhu Zhenyang was inwardly amazed by the fan's miraculous properties. He very seriously examined the handle, face, golden rims, and even the tassels that decorated the fan. How is it? The Empress Dowager was full of anticipation. Zhu Zhengyang looked up. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. No, no, no poison. In an instant, the Empress Dowager's expectant face turned gloomy. Come on, drag this quack out, flog him 50 times, and drive him away. Zhu Zhenyang was only speaking the truth. He knelt down in fright. Empress Dowager, please spare me. Spare me. Empress Dowager, this commoner has already tried his best. Empress Dowager, please spare this commoner's life for Imperial Physician Lin's sake. Even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. The Empress Dowager felt unwell all over. She fanned herself with the medicine fan without sparing Zhu Zhenyang a glance. Empress Dowager. Spare me. Spare my life. Zhu Zhenyang kept winking at Imperial Physician Lin, but at this critical juncture, Imperial Physician Lin could barely protect himself. How could he dare to make a sound? The Empress Dowager fanned the medicine fan with all her might, extremely irritated. Zhu Zhenyang was about to be dragged out of the door when he suddenly shouted, "Esteemed Empress Dowager, this commoner knows what happened. Esteemed Empress Dowager, please give this commoner another chance. The problem lies with the medicine fan." Only then did the Empress Dowager look at him. After a moment of hesitation, she waved her hand, indicating for the eunuch to withdraw. Zhu Zhenyang scrambled back. "Esteemed Empress Dowager, this commoner's diagnosis wasn't wrong. You really weren't poisoned, and the medicine fan isn't poisoned either." The Empress Dowager's eyes narrowed into slits at this point. She was about to reprimand him, but Zhu Zhenyang didn't even dare to catch his breath before continuing. "Esteemed Empress Dowager, the person who gave you the medicine fan told you that it can't be used casually." What was going on? The Empress Dowager had always known that the medicine fan was a medicine and couldn't be used casually. Han Yunqing had also mentioned this when she came to take away Gu Beiyue. Han Yunqing had even asked her about the condition of the medicine, so she was playing with her. Why can't it be used casually? Explain it clearly. The Empress Dowager was serious now. She saw hope again. If it was because of the medicine, then Han Yunqing couldn't escape responsibility either. Unexpectedly, Zhu Zhenyang gave a surprising answer. "Esteemed Empress Dowager, since the medicine fan is a medicine, then it must have side effects. Everyone's physique is different, so the side effects of medicine are different as well. In this commoner's opinion, it's very likely that your physique isn't suitable for the medicine fan. The itching on your scalp is a side effect." Zhu Zhenyang had only just realized this problem. Even the imperial physicians from the Imperial Academy of Medicine couldn't tell what the illness was, and he couldn't detect any poison either. The chances of her being poisoned were very low, and the possibility of it being a side effect of the medicine was very high. The Empress Dowager was about to speak when her neck suddenly itched. Soon, her scalp began to itch as well. As she scratched her scalp, she recalled that she'd often felt itchy these past few days. Come to think of it, it must have only happened a few days after she'd obtained the medicine fan. Could that really be the case? Aside from the itching on the scalp, what other side effects are there? The Empress Dowager asked anxiously. Aside from her hatred for Han Yunqing, she was finally concerned about her own health. This commoner doesn't understand medicine. Please forgive me, esteemed Empress Dowager. Zhu Zhenyang was here to cure the poison, not to treat the illness. Imperial Physician Lin, speak. The Empress Dowager was so anxious that she couldn't care less about framing Han Yunqing. If it really was a side effect, then how was she supposed to use the medicine fan? To her, nothing was more important than the medicine fan. Replying to esteemed Empress Dowager, the medicine's side effects do exist, but, Imperial Physician Lin stammered. He wasn't familiar with the medicine fan at all, so how was he supposed to answer? Still not speaking. The Empress Dowager was very impatient. It's just that this lowly official is incompetent. This lowly official isn't sure if the medicine fan's side effects are like this. Imperial physician Lin could only tell the truth. A bunch of trash. Trash. The Empress Dowager was furious. She'd been tormenting these two quacks for 2 days, but they still hadn't come up with anything. Men, drag them out and flog them 50 times each. Imperial physician Lin and Zhu Xingyang both wailed and begged for mercy. Unfortunately, the Empress Dowager didn't give them a chance this time. Who in the Imperial Academy of Medicine is the most knowledgeable about medicine? The Empress Dowager asked angrily. The most knowledgeable person in the Imperial Academy of Medicine was naturally Gu Beiyue. However, everyone present were eunuchs and nannies. They all knew that Gu Beiyue had been rescued by Qin Wangfei, so who dared to mention Gu Beiyue? In the end, Nanny Su stepped forward. Esteemed Empress Dowager, Imperial Physician Huang of the Imperial Academy of Medicine is skilled in medicine and medicine. He's on par with the head of the hospital. What are you waiting for? The Empress Dowager was displeased. She had a good grasp of Gu Beiyue's abilities. Imperial Physician Huang arrived very quickly. He was dressed in Imperial Physician robes and was serious in speech and manner, neither servile nor overbearing. Add to that the fact that he was in his 50s, and he naturally had the dignified aura of a physician. After a round of questioning, Imperial Physician Huang came to a conclusion: the medicine fan is indeed not something that can be casually used. Forgive this lowly official for speaking bluntly, but based on your constitution, the medicine fan isn't suitable for you. This conclusion was like a bolt of lightning to the Empress Dowager. What did he mean by pain is built on top of happiness? It was only after she'd had a good night's sleep that she truly understood the pain of insomnia. She might as well not have obtained the medicine fan at all if she couldn't use it. No, the Empress Dowager shook her head and asked anxiously, Imperial Physician Huang, then why did I sleep so well the first night? Just like taking medicine, the side effects don't occur immediately. Instead, they develop from mild to severe. Your esteemed Empress Dowager, the itch on your scalp during the second night shouldn't have been as severe as it was during the third night, right? Imperial Physician Huang asked seriously. The Empress Dowager nodded thoughtfully. Your esteemed Empress Dowager, if you use this fan during the day, will your body often feel itchy, although not as severe as the itch on your scalp? Imperial Physician Huang asked again. This time, the Empress Dowager immediately nodded. Yes, my hands are still itching even now. Imperial Physician Huang's expression was serious. Then that's right. Your esteemed Empress Dowager, the medicine fan is used for sleeping, so the side effects are the most severe when you're sleeping at night. Imperial Physician Huang's explanation was almost identical to what was happening to the Empress Dowager, so it was hard for her not to believe him. Her face was full of worry. This side effect will continue to worsen. Imperial Physician Huang stroked his beard with a grave expression. Yes. The Empress Dowager grew nervous. Imperial Physician Huang, what should I do? Your esteemed Empress Dowager, your situation should be considered a severe side effect. You should know that once the side effects of taking medicine become severe, there's only one way to. Imperial Physician Huang didn't continue, but the Empress Dowager understood. There was only one way, and that was to stop taking the medicine. The Empress Dowager slumped heavily against the back of her chair. She felt like all the strength in her body had been sucked out of her in an instant. She'd gone to great lengths to obtain the medicine fan, but she couldn't use it anymore. How could she accept this? She stared blankly for a long time before slowly shaking her head. No, that's impossible. Imperial Physician Huang, could it be that I've been poisoned? Or was the medicine fan poisoned by someone? Imperial Physician Huang remained serious in the face of the Empress Dowager's emotional turmoil. To reply, your esteemed Empress Dowager, this official doesn't recognize poison, but the possibility isn't high. Your esteemed Empress Dowager can invite the poison doctors of the Imperial Academy of Medicine to take a look. The poison doctors of the Imperial Academy of Medicine were far inferior to Zhu Zhenyang. It would be pointless for the Empress Dowager to invite them. Imperial Physician Huang, is there no other way besides stopping the medicine? The Empress Dowager asked anxiously. Imperial Physician Huang shook his head. There isn't. The Empress Dowager was thoroughly disappointed. She slumped into her seat, her eyes dimming. She didn't say anything for a long time. How could she accept this reality? She'd waited for so many years and spent so much effort, yet she was still immersed in the joy of obtaining the medicine fan. In the end, it was all for naught. What was she supposed to do? Was she supposed to hide the medicine fan and keep her eyes open until daybreak? If it were any other reason, she could still think of a way to resolve it, but it had to do with her own constitution. Someone as lofty as her finally understood what it meant to be powerless. After sitting in a daze for a long time, the Empress Dowager finally said, Imperial Physician Huang, you're not allowed to. Imperial Physician Huang was very smart and hurriedly promised, this official understands. This official doesn't know anything today. This official asks that your esteemed Empress Dowager quickly leave the medicine fan to prevent the itching from worsening. Only then did the Empress Dowager weakly wave her hand, indicating for him to withdraw. She'd failed to make things difficult for Han Yunqing, but at the very least, she couldn't let her know about this. Otherwise, she'd laugh her head off. The room was silent. None of the servants dared to make a sound. The Empress Dowager stared blankly at the medicine fan in her hand. Chapter 341. I can't bear to part with it. The Empress Dowager stared at the medicine fan as her eyes turned red. She couldn't bear to part with it. However, not long after, her arms started to itch again. When she recalled Imperial Physician Huang's instructions, she could only endure her heartache. Someone come, take this. After some hesitation, she finally said, someone come, lock this medicine fan in the cabinet. Night quickly fell. The Empress Dowager leaned tiredly on the bed as she stared at the locked cabinet. Her heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. Tonight would be a nightmare she'd never be able to escape. Late at night, Imperial Physician Huang snuck back to the Duke of Qin's estate. After hearing him talk about today's events at the Palace of Heaven and Earth, Han Yunqing laughed out loud. Zhao Mama and Chu Shifeng were delighted as well. Everything Imperial Physician Huang had said today at the Palace of Heaven and Earth had come from Han Yunqing's instructions. Han Yunqing had poisoned the Empress Dowager the first day she entered the palace to save Gu Beiyue. It was a poison called cicada fragrance. The poison would only show its toxicity when it interacted with the medicine fan's medicinal scent. During the day, the poison's toxicity was very low and only caused a slight itch on the body. At night, it would directly affect the scalp and cause an unbearable itch. Cicada fragrance was a rare poison to begin with, while the medicine fan was a rare medicinal ingredient. Very few people understood their effects, much less the fact that the two poisoned each other. Han Yunqing was certain that the Empress Dowager would suspect her of poisoning as soon as something happened. She was confident that none of the Empress Dowager's poison experts would be able to detect cicada fragrance. If the Empress Dowager couldn't find a solution, she'd have to turn back to the Imperial Physician Courtyard. Besides Gu Beiyue, Imperial Physician Huang was the most skilled doctor there. Thus, Han Yunqing had long told Imperial Physician Huang how to deal with the situation. Esteemed Wang Fei, this move is too ruthless. This old servant admires it. Admirable. Zhao Mama had served in the palace for years, but she'd never seen anyone play like this. Why didn't she realize that esteemed Wang Fei was so two-faced? Delightful. Esteemed Wang Fei, as this subordinate sees it, the Empress Dowager will definitely take out the medicine fan. Chu Shifeng laughed. Imagining the Empress Dowager being unable to sleep, yet not daring to take out the medicine fan, being stuck between a rock and a hard place, with all kinds of painful expressions on her face, it was really satisfying. Han Yunqing looked back at Gu Beiyue, who was still unconscious, and said calmly, Gu Beiyue, I've avenged you. When will you wake up? After Han Yunqing said that, everyone quieted down. Although it was worth being happy to play a trick on the Empress Dowager, Han Yunqing couldn't really be happy until Gu Beiyue woke up. Let me take his pulse again, Imperial Physician Huang said calmly. Unexpectedly, before he could sit down, the little thing that was curled up beside Gu Beiyue's arm screamed, squeak squeak. Squeak. As it barked, it pointed at Gu Beiyue's left hand. Han Yunqing looked over and saw Gu Beiyue's left hand moving. He's moving. He's moving. Imperial Physician Huang, hurry and move, no, hurry and look. Han Yunqing was so excited that she couldn't even speak properly. Imperial Physician Huang was excited as well. He glanced at Gu Beiyue's hand and confirmed that Gu Beiyue's fingers were moving. He quickly went to examine Gu Beiyue's eyelids. Lil Thing was the most excited of all. It immediately jumped up beside Gu Beiyue's face and scratched him with its furry paws, hoping to wake him up. Imperial Physician Huang immediately took out his acupuncture needles. Esteemed Wang Fei, please step back for a moment. This official will do the needles again and there won't be any problems. Han Yunqing couldn't bear to part with him. Actually, she really wanted to say that it wasn't a big deal for a man to be bare-chested. Even if there was a problem, she didn't mind. She'd seen enough of it. Unfortunately, when she thought of the master of this mansion, she could only silently leave with Zhao Mama. As soon as they left, Zhao Mama hurriedly said, Esteemed Wang Fei, there's something this old servant doesn't know if it's appropriate to say. Han Yunqing was on guard. Zhao Mama had always been straightforward with her. Only when she was with the Long Fei Yi would she be so cautious. What was wrong with her today? Zhao Mama was helpless when she saw esteemed Wang Fei's expression. Esteemed Wang Fei, this old servant will just speak frankly. If Imperial Physician Gu wakes up, shall we send him back? Han Yunqing didn't say anything and continued to stare at Zhao Mama with raised brows. Zhao Mama felt that she didn't say anything wrong, but she felt incomparably guilty being stared at. She stammered for a long time before saying, Esteemed Wang Fei, in this situation, if this matter were to spread, it wouldn't be good for Imperial Physician Gu. After all, Imperial Physician Gu works in the palace. Han Yunqing couldn't help rolling her eyes. If the palace didn't know about my relationship with him, would they have made him like this? She didn't know what Zhao Mama was worried about. Everyone knew that she was on good terms with Gu Beiyue. Zhao Mama wanted to roll her eyes too. Her mistress looked smart, but why was she always so muddle-headed when it came to matters? Wasn't she afraid that His Highness Duke of Qin would be unhappy that she'd made Gu Beiyue stay for days? If this was any other matter, Zhao Mama would have said it long ago. But this time, it involved His Highness Duke of Qin. She couldn't just say that His Highness Duke of Qin would be angry, right? Wouldn't that make her mistress seem lacking in magnanimity? What if His Highness Duke of Qin heard her say that? What would he think? Han Yunqing was too lazy to pay Zhao Mama any attention. She simply sat on the stone steps and waited while Zhao Mama struggled to figure out what to say. Inside the room, Chu Shifeng had already helped Gu Beiyue take off his outer robes while Imperial Physician Huang applied acupuncture. Chu Shifeng had already tested Gu Beiyue's pulse and found no signs that he knew martial arts. Now that Gu Beiyue had taken off his clothes, Chu Shifeng took advantage of Imperial Physician Huang's distraction to feel a few more acupoints on Gu Beiyue's body. But the results were the same. Gu Beiyue didn't know martial arts. Chu Shifeng didn't know how His Highness Duke of Qin had set his sights on Gu Beiyue, but he wouldn't make a mistake. How could Gu Beiyue not know martial arts? Chu Shifeng couldn't figure it out no matter how much he racked his brains. He tested him a few more times, but the results were the same. It looked like he could only tell the truth to the Duke of Qin. Soon enough, Imperial physician Huang withdrew his needles, but Gu Beiyue still hadn't woken up. Han Yunqing was disappointed when she saw him, thinking that he'd wake up soon. "How is it?" she asked worriedly. "Esteemed Wang Fei, don't worry. Imperial physician Gu will wake up by tomorrow morning at the latest." Imperial physician Huang was certain. Han Yunqing silently exhaled and set her mind at ease. Ever since she'd met Gu Beiyue at the general's estate, Gu Beiyue had always helped her, but also been implicated by her. If anything happened to Gu Beiyue this time, she'd die of guilt. Lil Thing didn't understand Imperial physician Huang's words, but when it saw that Gu Beiyue still wasn't awake, it immediately jumped onto Han Yunqing's body and began to squeak non-stop. "Idiot, he'll be fine. Don't worry, he'll wake up tomorrow," Han Yunqing said with a smile. Seeing Han Yunqing smile, Lil Thing seemed to understand as well. It excitedly leapt high into the air and did a somersault before landing on the bed. Then it immediately snuggled up next to Gu Beiyue and rubbed against him like a spoiled child. Imperial physician Huang watched in a daze, curious as to what kind of treasure this squirrel was. Still, he knew better than to ask too many questions in the Duke of Qin's estate. After confirming that Gu Beiyue would wake up, Han Yunqing felt much more relaxed. She didn't even bother to rest in the middle of the night, much less Xiao Mama's persuasion. She went straight to the Han estate's storehouse to search for medicine. Chu Shifeng could only follow closely behind her. Han Yunqing found plenty of warm and nourishing medicines from the storehouse, suitable for people with weak constitutions. She took out a large bag and tossed it to Chu Shifeng. It wasn't clear whether Chu Shifeng had been influenced by Xiao Mama, but the more he looked, the more unhappy he grew. On the way back to the estate, he couldn't help but mutter, "Esteemed Wang Fei, why don't you keep such good ingredients for yourself?" "It's not like I need it," Han Yunqing replied offhandedly. "Perhaps His Highness Duke of Qin will need it," Chu Shifeng added. Han Yunqing grew amused and murmured, "I left him plenty of good things." Chu Shifeng felt helpless. He didn't know how to continue. "Chu Shifeng, you have to keep watch tonight. If Imperial physician Gu wakes up in the middle of the night, you have to tell me," Han Yunqing instructed. Gu Beiyue was too ill, so she had to be cautious. "This subordinate knows," Chu Shifeng replied absent-mindedly. Meanwhile, the carriage was slowly passing by the back gates of General Mu's estate. Han Yunqing only glanced at it before she heard two familiar voices. The Crown Prince and Mu Qinggu. Han Yunqing was stunned. Chu Shifeng quickly turned his back so they couldn't see him. Once the carriage was far away, Han Yunqing spoke up. "Chu Shifeng, I wasn't seeing things just then, right? It really was them. Strange." Chu Shifeng was stunned as well. In the past, General Mu's estate was rumored to be under the second imperial prince's control. Moreover, General Mu's behavior at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet had been very neutral. No matter whether the estate sided with the second imperial prince or remained neutral, it was unlikely that Mu Qinggu would side with the crown prince. Why had the crown prince come out of the Mu estate's back gates in the middle of the night? "Esteemed Wang Fei, could it be because of the soldiers' pay and provisions?" Chu Shifeng guessed. There were only a few days left before he had to hand over the provisions to Emperor Tianhui. That's even more impossible. Han Yunqing rejected the idea. That day, Mu Qinggu had run into Long Fei Yi when he came to her door to ask for her help. The Long Fei Yi had already pointed out the crux of the matter. The imperial uncle's estate had embezzled most of the grain and silver from the national treasury for disaster relief. Mu Qinggu should hate the imperial uncle's estate the most, but weren't the crown prince and the imperial uncle from the same family? Just what had happened between the two of them? Han Yunqing couldn't figure it out no matter how much she thought about it. But Han Yunqing was very clear on one thing. If Mu Qinggu and the crown prince were in cahoots, then the crown prince would have an extra trump card in his hands. Without a doubt, the crown prince would stand on the emperor's side in the battle between him and the Duke of Qin. By the time Han Yunqing and Chu Shifeng returned to the estate, it was almost daybreak. Zhao Mama was personally waiting by the gates. As soon as she saw esteemed Wang Fei, she hurried to greet her. Esteemed Wang Fei, you've been tired all night. Hurry and go back to rest. How's Gu Beiyue? Has he moved? Han Yunqing asked with concern. He's moved. Lil Thing's watching over him, so it'll know as soon as there's any movement. Esteemed Wang Fei, don't worry, Zhao Mama had only one goal in mind, and that was to send esteemed Wang Fei back to Leisurely Cloud Pavilion to sleep. Unfortunately, Han Yunqing's mind was preoccupied with the unconscious Gu Beiyue. It's already daybreak, so I won't sleep. Zhao Mama grew angry and blurted out, esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness won't be happy if you act like this. Note to the readers, follow the Genius Little Poison Consort's WeChat account Tienkexia Dufiai. You can check out all sorts of character and plot reviews. Chapter 342. Zhao Mama said that if she continued to act like this, His Highness Duke of Qin would be angry. Why would His Highness Duke of Qin be angry? Han Yunqing's heart skipped a beat. If she said that she didn't understand what Zhao Mama meant, then she was definitely being pretentious. Women were always more sensitive than men when it came to matters of the heart, not to mention a woman as intelligent as Han Yunqing. She knew exactly what Granny Zhao meant. But she wasn't sure. She blinked her limpid eyes and stared at Zhao Mama without saying a word. Thinking that her mistress didn't understand, Zhao Mama anxiously sighed and tried to persuade her, esteemed Wang Fei, after all, men and women shouldn't touch each other. Moreover, there's a difference in status. His Highness Duke of Qin isn't in the estate, and you left a grown man in the estate for so many days and even personally took care of him. This isn't appropriate. If this matter were to spread, it would damage Imperial Physician Gu's, your, and His Highness's reputation. Unexpectedly, Han Yunqing looked disappointed. That's it. So that's what Zhao Mama meant. She thought it was. Zhao Mama was stunned. This is already very serious. What else do you want? Han Yunqing's hands tugged at the hem of her clothes as she muttered, I thought he would be angry because he minds. Zhao Mama was defeated by her mistress. How could such a smart person be so muddle-headed when it came to matters of the heart? Han Yunqing's eyes brightened when she heard this. So Zhao Mama's meaning was exactly as she had thought. She looked at Zhao Mama and stared. She didn't know what to think, but she suddenly smiled. Esteemed Wang Fei, are you alright? Zhao Mama was truly frightened. Han Yunqing burst into laughter. I'm fine. Imperial Physician Gu will stay in the estate to recuperate. I'll let him go when he's fully recovered. After she finished speaking, she walked around Zhao Mama, who was blocking her way, and cheerfully walked towards the guest rooms. What's wrong with her? What's going on? Zhao Mama was baffled and hurriedly chased after her. Esteemed Wang Fei, why don't you understand? If His Highness Duke of Qin comes back, he'll definitely be unhappy. Han Yunqing turned to look at her and gave her an especially bright and beautiful smile. It was so bright that it could illuminate the pitch-black Duke of Qin's estate. She said, Zhao Mama, this time, I want him to be unhappy. Long Fei, if there's still a lot of distance between us, will we get closer again this time? Zhao Mama stood rooted to the ground, unable to regain her senses for a long time. She always knew that the Princess Consort was bold, but she never thought that she would be this brave. Boldness and bravery were two different concepts. Aside from the shock and surprise, Granny Zhao liked this mistress even more. She wasn't pretentious and was so natural and unrestrained that she was so cute. Esteemed Wang Fei, wait for this old servant. This old servant will help you. Granny Zhao was overjoyed and hurriedly chased after her. Chu Shifeng's mouth twitched at the words. Should he tell His Highness Duke of Qin? It didn't seem to be that good. Moreover, how was he supposed to tell His Highness Duke of Qin? After thinking it over, Chu Shifeng decided to stay silent. He couldn't imagine what His Highness Duke of Qin's expression would look like if he told him about such matters of the heart. Abruptly, Zhao Mama turned back and warned, "Little Chu, watch your mouth." Chu Shifeng rolled his eyes. "I didn't hear a thing. You guys should pray for yourselves." Han Yunqing hurried to the guest room, only to see Lil Thing feeding Gu Beiyue blood. Lil Thing had scratched its own paw and was dripping blood to feed Gu Beiyue. Frightened, Han Yunqing rushed over. "Lil Thing. What are you doing?" Lil Thing gave her a fright as well. It quickly extended its bloody paw towards Han Yunqing and blinked its large eyes, as if to say, "Mama Yunxi, check it. There's no poison." Lil Thing was only the size of a palm, so how big could its paw be? There was a large gash in its paw, from which fresh blood poured out. Last time, Han Yunqing had been very careful with her knife when she took the antidote's blood. Heaven knows how this little beast had scratched itself. Han Yunqing's heart ached at the sight, her heart filled with disgust. Seeing Mama Yunxi's unhappy expression, Lil Thing kept feeding Gu Beiyue while squeaking. It seemed to be saying, "Mama Yunxi, don't worry. As long as the gentleman drinks my blood, he'll be fine. I've eaten so many good things, my blood's very nutritious." Ever since Mama Yunxi had taken its blood for the antidote, it hadn't fully recovered. Its blood couldn't cure the poison, and the poison in its fangs wasn't very strong, but its blood was still very nutritious. It had all sorts of benefits for the gentleman's weak body. It had long wanted to feed its blood to the gentleman, but never found a chance. Han Yunqing's expression was still grave as she watched. Lil Thing had no idea that its beloved Mama Yunxi was feeling sorry for it. It kept squeaking as if comforting her. "It's fine, the gentleman will be fine very soon." In the end, Han Yunqing smiled helplessly before Lil Thing stopped squeaking. Han Yunqing sat on one side, gently stroking Lil Thing's soft fur with a smile. "Little beast. Why are you so good to Gu Beiyue?" Lil Thing loved Mama Yunxi's touch the most. Gradually, as it fed Gu Beiyue blood, its eyes narrowed into slits as it enjoyed it. "Mama Yunxi, it's so comfortable. But why am I so dizzy?" Squeak squeak, Lil Thing squeaked twice before slowly collapsing onto Gu Beiyue's body. "It's so tired, it really wants to sleep." "Mama Yunxi, Lil Thing wants to sleep in the gentleman's arms, can I?" Han Yunqing quickly scooped Lil Thing up, only to see its eyes shut as it fainted. It seemed much lighter than before, not as heavy as before. Lil Thing must have lost too much blood. She vaguely remembered Gu Beiyue saying that the little Gu Shu needed a long period of recovery after taking its blood for the antidote. Fortunately, Lil Thing couldn't die, or else Han Yunqing wouldn't know what would happen. Han Yunqing carefully treated Lil Thing's wounds before placing it in a small chest filled with all sorts of poisons and tonics. She didn't know how long it'd take for Lil Thing to wake up, but as soon as it did, it could start eating tonics. After taking care of Lil Thing, Han Yunqing remained by Gu Beiyue's bedside, with Zhao Mama and Chu Shifeng by her side. Zhao Mama was in a much better mood this time. She dearly wished that His Highness Duke of Qin would hurry back. Gu Beiyue lay there quietly. Thanks to Lil Thing's blood, his complexion was much better than before. In fact, he looked even better than before his accident. Currently, he was in a daze, half-awake state. He felt like he was dreaming, but also like he'd returned to his childhood. His parents and grandfather were still alive then. Every day, he and his father would soak in the tub of medicine to nourish their bodies and drink lots and lots of bitter medicine. Just like his father, his body had been weak from birth and he'd almost died. His mother was very gentle and often stroked his head to comfort him. "Beiyue, don't be afraid. You won't die. Father and mother will always be by your side." But one day, his father fell asleep in the tub of medicine and never woke up again. His mother was still as gentle as ever, stroking his head to comfort him. Beiyue, don't be afraid. Grandfather will always be by your side. That day, his mother passed away with his father. His grandfather was as gentle as his father and mother, telling him, Beiyue, you're the only one left. You can't die. From that day onwards, his grandfather searched for all sorts of famous and wondrous medicines and forcefully used them to prop up his sickly body. It had been a very, very long time since he'd been so weak, just like how he fainted countless times when he was young. He really, really wanted to just fall asleep like this, but there was always a voice by his ear. Beiyue, you're the only one left. You can't die. In his days, Gu Beiyue seemed to see his parents' gentle and loving faces again. It was as if he'd returned to his childhood when he didn't know anything and didn't know anything. But when he slowly opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the stern and serious little face that had captivated him the most. He was slightly taken aback, but he smiled very soon. He hid away all the warmth and sorrow from his dream, leaving no trace behind. Esteemed Wang Fei, did you save me? Han Yunqing knew Gu Beiyue would wake up, but she never thought it would be so soon. She nodded in surprise and joy. Yep. It's good that you can wake up. That's fantastic. Granny Zhao was overjoyed as well. She went to pour some water in a hurry. Han Yunqing took Gu Beiyue's pulse seriously. Only when she discovered that his pulse was basically normal did she stop worrying. Esteemed Wang Fei must have used some wondrous medicine on me. Gu Beiyue knew his own body the best. There was a warm energy in his body that slowly seeped into his meridians. It was extremely beneficial to the recovery of his vitality. If it were not for the effects of this energy, he probably would have slept for a few more hours. The little thing's blood, Han Yunqing drew close and leaned over Gu Beiyue, whispering into his ear. Although Han Yunqing left very soon, Granny Zhao was stunned. Esteemed Wang Fei, even if you want to make His Highness unhappy, you can't get so close. Something big will happen. Granny Zhao hurried forward with water. She was about to insert herself between Han Yunqing and Gu Beiyue when Chu Shifeng suddenly shouted, "Who's there? Come out!" At the same time, multiple black-robed assassins rushed in from the east and west windows, all of them wielding long swords. They headed straight for Han Yunqing and Gu Beiyue. "Ah, someone come, there's an assassin." "Assassins!" Granny Zhao shouted as she stood in front of Han Yunqing to protect her. There were quite a few assassins in this group, each of them a 1 in 100 expert. Chu Shifeng was fighting one against many and couldn't hold his own after a few moves. Fortunately, the Duke of Qin's guards quickly showed up, but even they couldn't stop the assassins. Anyone who could get past the estate's layers of defenses to get here couldn't be simple. Abruptly, a sharp sword flew towards Xiao Mama's direction. Gu Beiyue could see it clearly from his bed. He cried out in alarm, "Granny Zhao, esteemed Wang Fei, watch out. Little Chu." Granny Zhao cried out in fright, but Chu Shifeng was currently surrounded by 3 assassins. None of the other guards had time to escape either. Han Yunqing didn't bat an eyelid. Just as the sword was about to reach her, she shot out a hidden needle. But Chapter 343. Han Yunqing had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike, but never expected the assassin to dodge her needles so easily. To be able to dodge her hidden needles in this situation, one had to be very familiar with her hidden needles or a very powerful expert. Han Yunqing realized in hindsight that she'd underestimated these assassins. Zhao Mama was an old woman who didn't have the strength to truss a chicken. Han Yunqing's needles hadn't hurt her at all, so the blade was about to stab her. Zhao Mama was so scared that she didn't even dare to move. Han Yunqing abruptly grabbed hold of her and threw her backwards onto the bed. Zhao Mama fell backwards as well, just enough for the sword to brush past her body. Speaking of which, it was strange that such an expert hadn't actually hurt Zhao Mama even though his sword had brushed past her body. Moreover, Han Yunqing was even safer behind her back. In the blink of an eye, Han Yunqing kicked viciously at the assassin. As he dodged, she pushed Zhao Mama aside and prepared to flee as well. But at this moment, another assassin stabbed at Gu Beiyue with his sword. Chu Shifeng, save me! Han Yunqing screamed as she shot out her needles. Unfortunately, Chu Shifeng couldn't split himself in two. There were too many strong black-robed assassins, filling the room with the clanging of weapons and the sounds of battle. Two of the guards rushed over to save Zhao Mama, but one of them quickly slit their throats. The other guard was no match for the black-robed assassin's pincer attack. Esteemed Wang Fei, hurry and run. Don't worry about me. Gu Beiyue cried in alarm. He was lying on the bed, unable to move, but he had been observing the movements of the assassins the entire time. These assassins seemed to have come for esteemed Wang Fei, but they were also coming for him. What were their origins? A complicated look flickered past his eyes. Just what kind of person could cultivate such a large group of experts? They actually dared to barge into the Duke of Qin's estate in broad daylight. What's with all the nonsense? Han Yunqing looked unhappy as she spoke. She shoved Gu Beiyue into the bed and shielded him with her own body. Gu Beiyue's lips quirked up into a helpless smile, but it quickly disappeared. Esteemed Wang Fei, you, Zhao Mama was furious. Although she was afraid, she couldn't let esteemed Wang Fei get hurt no matter what. She crawled to her feet and abruptly pulled Han Yunqing over. As soon as Han Yunqing moved aside, two swords shot towards Gu Beiyue. Their target was obvious, they were aiming for Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue furrowed his brows as he faced the two blades. Like anyone who didn't know martial arts, his face was filled with fear and nervousness. Still, he didn't lose his composure and simply clenched his fists. It was like he was facing the fear of death, but also like he was hesitating about something. However, in the end, the hesitation in his eyes disappeared without a trace. He watched helplessly as the blade approached, getting closer and closer. Imperial Physician Gu. Han Yunqing shouted. She threw out several hidden needles and hit one of the assassins. But another assassin quickly took his place. Soon, another assassin was coming for her. Han Yunqing defended herself while calling for help. Someone come, protect Imperial Physician Gu. Quickly. It was a chaotic battle. Suddenly, Gu Beiyue gave a grunt. Han Yunqing quickly turned around and saw an assassin's sword piercing Gu Beiyue's arm. The other assassin's sword was aimed at his abdomen. So ruthless. Han Yunqing sucked in a cold breath. She didn't care about the trouble on her side. All the hidden needles in her arm flew towards the assassin. This time, the assassin was hit by 5 hidden needles. 3 of the needles hit his vital points and he instantly fell to the ground. But everything didn't end with that assassin falling down. Han Yunqing didn't even have time to catch her breath as another assassin attacked from the side. At the same time, on Gu Beiyue's side, the assassin who had pierced his arm fiercely pulled out his sword and aimed at his vital points. A cold glint flashed past Gu Beiyue's eyes. The hand which was hidden under the blanket finally grabbed onto a small flying dagger. But at this moment, the little thing which was sleeping in a small box suddenly jumped up and pounced towards that assassin with its fangs and claws bared. It directly pounced onto his face and scratched wildly. Damn it, he actually dared to hurt its young master. Did they really think that it was a rat if it didn't fly into a rage? The assassin's mask was torn to pieces and his entire face was instantly ruined. No matter how he scratched, the little thing just clung onto his face. Ah! Ah! The assassin cried out in pain. But this sudden change of events didn't affect the other assassins. They were all well-trained and emotionless death warriors. None of them cared about their companions' cries as they continued to attack. Very soon, another assassin broke through the guard's defenses and headed straight for Gu Beiyue's side. But as soon as Lil Thing sensed the killing intent, it leapt into the air and landed on the head of the assassin closest to Gu Beiyue. It scratched wildly, causing large amounts of blood to flow from the black-robed assassin's head. The assassin stood in place for a moment before collapsing to the ground, dead. Only then did the other assassins stop, realizing that this squirrel wasn't someone to be trifled with. Lil Thing crawled on the edge of the bed, its eyes narrowed as it looked aggressive. Although it was very tired, it still jumped up as soon as it sensed killing intent. It wanted to protect Mama Yunxi. But as soon as it jumped up, it discovered that the gentleman was in danger as well. More accurately, the gentleman was in even more danger than Mama Yunxi. Although the black-robed assassins were attacking Mama Yunxi as well, they didn't have any killing intent at all. Instead, it was the gentleman who was filled with killing intent. Lil Thing didn't know the origins of these assassins, nor did it know why they didn't want to kill Mama Yunxi. It only knew that no matter what the reason was, no one could hurt the gentleman. To Lil Thing, the gentleman was just as important as Mama Yunxi. As soon as Lil Thing took charge, the black-robed assassins restrained themselves. It wasn't clear who gave the word, retreat, but all of them began to retreat. Capture them alive, the archers will be here soon. Chu Shifeng ordered. Another round of killing broke out, killing many of the guards and black-robed assassins alike. Unfortunately, there were no survivors in the end. By the time the archers arrived, all of the black-robed assassins had fled, leaving behind a mess in the room. Lil Thing was so tired that it wanted nothing more. It plopped down next to Gu Beiyue, using all of its remaining strength to open its eyes and stare at Mama Yunxi. Zhao Mama was sitting on the ground, too scared to stand up. Han Yunqing rushed to the bed and asked, Gu Beiyue, are you alright? Gu Beiyue's expression was still panicked, but he was still very polite. Many thanks to esteemed Wang Fei, this official is fine. Esteemed Wang Fei, are you alright? Chu Shifeng asked urgently. Han Yunqing looked at Lil Thing's helpless state and felt her heart ache. What's the archers doing? They came so late. If it wasn't for Lil Thing, none of us would be alive. She raged. The assassins really were strong, so Chu Shifeng and the guards couldn't be blamed. But the archers were a little late as well. Chu Shifeng ordered, someone come, call Li Difu in. Li Difu was the commander of the archers at the Duke of Qin's estate. As soon as he entered, he fell to his knees. This humble one has failed in his duties. May esteemed Wang Fei mete out punishment. Why did you come so late? Han Yunqing was filled with anger. Leaving aside the severity of today's events, how were they supposed to ensure the safety of the Duke of Qin's estate at this speed? How could anyone who dared to break into the estate and kill people be simple? They might have escaped this time, but there'd be a next time. If she didn't know that Long Fei Ye's subordinates were strictly disciplined, she would have suspected that they were late on purpose. To reply esteemed Wang Fei, assassins broke into the northwest corner of the ancestral hall to kidnap esteemed imperial concubine. This humble one and the archers were busy dealing with them and had no time to attend to this side. This humble one has failed in his duties, may esteemed Wang Fei mete out punishment. Before Han Yunqing could speak, Chu Shifeng grew alarmed. What's going on? Why didn't they report it? This humble one was leading the archers over when we received news of reinforcements. We didn't even have time to report it. Li Difu replied. Then did they catch the culprits? Han Yunqing was alarmed as well. Were these two groups of assassins from the same group? Had they split up to scatter the Duke of Qin's forces? Were they aiming for her and Gu Beiyue, or Grand Concubine Yi? Or perhaps both? To reply esteemed Wang Fei, this humble one was incompetent. The three assassins we captured all committed suicide, while the rest escaped, Li Difu replied honestly. Han Yunqing knitted her brows as she looked towards Chu Shifeng, who walked over with a grave expression. He whispered in Han Yunqing's ear, esteemed Wang Fei, could they be aiming for Grand Concubine Yi? Han Yunqing had long guessed as much. These assassins' true goal was to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi. Killing her and Gu Beiyue was just a way to scatter their forces and delay Chu Shifeng. Han Yunqing came to a prompt decision. Li Difu, immediately dispatch men from the solitary enclosure to strengthen the defenses. Chu Shifeng, report this to His Highness Duke of Qin as soon as possible. This was the first time Han Yunqing had given direct orders to the Duke of Qin's subordinates. She really did have the air of a mistress of the house. Li Difu didn't dare delay and left immediately. Chu Shifeng's eyes flashed with admiration. This subordinate understands. Gu Beiyue watched the entire scene in silence, his brows furrowed in thought. The attendants quickly cleaned up the assassins' corpses and cleaned up the entire room. Currently, Lil Thing was nestled against Gu Beiyue's side. It looked like it was asleep, but it was completely unconscious. Gu Beiyue's fingers gently stroked its pure white fur, but it didn't know a thing. It's all thanks to Lil Thing, Han Yunqing remarked mildly. Esteemed Wang Fei, these assassins. Gu Beiyue trailed off. They came for me. There's nothing to be done, I've offended too many people. Han Yunqing's expression was helpless. If these assassins were really after Grand Concubine Yi as she and Chu Shifeng guessed, then the true culprits behind the scenes were none other than those two in the palace. Although the Empress Dowager had stopped caring about Long Fei Ye's origins after Mama Su's death, that didn't mean she'd forgotten. Emperor Tianhui had as well. To the imperial clan, Long Fei Ye's origins were more important than anything else. Mama Su was dead, so the only servants who knew the truth were dead as well. But there was still Grand Concubine Yi. Who else knew better than Grand Concubine Yi about what happened that year? After all, whether Long Fei Yi was a descendant of Tianning's imperial clan was the most direct way to question Grand Concubine Yi. Han Yunqing shouldered all the blame on herself so that Gu Beiyue wouldn't suspect anything. Esteemed Wang Fei, you have to take care of yourself. Gu Beiyue said sincerely. At this moment, there was the sound of something breaking through the air. Soon enough, a sharp arrow flew through the air towards Gu Beiyue. The arrow caught everyone by surprise, threatening to topple mountains and overturn seas. By the time everyone reacted, Gu Beiyue had already been shot in the stomach and spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 344. On the roof of the palace directly opposite the Duke of Qin's guest room, Long Fei Ye's movements were graceful as he slowly put away his bow. His handsome face was as cold and emotionless as ever. A shadow guard hurried forward to take the bow. Long Fei Yi stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He stared coldly at the door of the guest room, his wide black cloak flapping in the cold wind. Soon, the door to the guest room opened. Zhao Mama hurriedly ran out and shouted something. Not long after, Imperial Physician Huang rushed over with a medicine box. Not long after, the archers arrived as well. They surrounded the guest room and protected it from all sides. Long Fei Yi frowned slightly at this moment. The confusion between his brows was faintly discernible, making it difficult to see through. He continued to watch without batting an eyelid. Not long after, a shadow guard arrived. Reporting, the Tang sect sent a messenger pigeon to report that young Master Tang has already been escorted to the bridal sedan. His mood isn't very good. Long Fei Yi was supposed to stay at the Tang sect for a few more days. According to his plan, he was supposed to personally escort Tang Li to the Medicine Ghost Valley with Tang Li to settle accounts with Gu Qi Sha. However, no one had expected him to leave so early. This made Tang Li, who was already so depressed that he was about to go crazy, even more depressed. Today was the day of the wedding. Tang Li was probably on his way to the bridal sedan. This prince has already made arrangements for him. If he still can't escape, then tell him not to come, Long Fei Yi said. Yes. The shadow guard respectfully withdrew. Long Fei Yi sat down on the roof and stared at the guest room door with interest. This made the shadow guard beside him secretly sigh with emotion. After following the Duke of Qin for so many years, he had never seen him be so patient with another man. Gu Beiyue was the first. At this time, the atmosphere in the guest room was very heavy. No one expected that there would be an arrow after the assassination. In the panic just now, Han Yunqing stopped Gu Beiyue's bleeding first. Now they were waiting for Imperial Physician Huang to pull out the arrow. One had to know that Gu Beiyue had just woken up, and his body was already very weak. However, this arrow had hit him squarely in the abdomen. This was a fatal injury to Gu Beiyue's body. Judging from this depth, Imperial Physician Huang had already sighed several times. According to the length of a normal arrow, this sharp arrow had shot right at Gu Beiyue's dantian. Although the arrow had only penetrated a little, at this location, just a little was enough to take a person's life. He could not estimate how much blood Gu Beiyue would lose if he pulled out the arrow, nor could he estimate how much damage it would cause to his dantian acupoint. At this time, Gu Beiyue still had some consciousness. However, once the arrow was pulled out, would he, in fact, Han Yunqing knew what was going on. When Imperial Physician Huang rushed over, she had already checked everything clearly. She was just like Imperial Physician Huang, unable to imagine what would happen. She really hoped that Gu Beiyue knew martial arts. In that case, things would be much simpler. As long as he used his martial arts, the arrow would be shaken out. How could there be so many ifs in this world? Han Yunqing hoped that she could think of another way, but at this time, her mind was in a mess. She couldn't even think about what was going on with today's assassination. Was this arrow related to the previous assassination attempt? Who was the target of today's assassination attempt? Her mind was full of regret. She regretted getting acquainted with Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue had been the head of the Imperial Physician Courtyard for so many years. He'd always played it safe and never offended anyone. But after meeting her, he'd become the target of public criticism. He'd been framed, locked up in the imperial prisons, tortured, and assassinated. With his intelligence and temper, he could have lived a peaceful life in Tianning's capital city. After Imperial Physician Huang finished his examination, he carefully explained the situation to Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue's medical skills were far superior to Imperial Physician Huang's, so it was better to let him decide whether to pull out the arrow while he was still conscious. If he pulled out the arrow, he might bleed non-stop until he died. If he didn't, the arrowhead would stay in his body for too long and become infected. Delaying it for too long would result in death either, or an even more miserable death. Gu Beiyue's lips had long lost all color from the torment. He listened carefully to Imperial Physician Huang's words while glancing at Chu Shifeng out of the corner of his eye. His movements were so fast that even Chu Shifeng didn't notice. Imperial Physician Gu, that's the situation. You decide for yourself. Imperial Physician Huang's expression was especially heavy. Actually, the danger was the same whether he pulled out the arrow or not. Before Gu Beiyue was a choice between life and death. In the silence of the room, everyone was looking at Gu Beiyue, waiting for his answer. Time trickled by until Gu Beiyue's ashen face revealed a relieved smile. Esteemed Wang Fei, this official's life was saved by you. Please make a decision for this official. Han Yunqing immediately turned her head away, her eyebrows furrowed. Gu Beiyue was handing his life over to her. Esteemed Wang Fei, don't be afraid. This official believes in you. If Han Yunqing had turned around, she would have seen Gu Beiyue's warm smile like an April spring breeze. She would have found strength in that smile. Unfortunately, she didn't have the guts to do so. If this happened to her, she would have acted decisively. But facing Gu Beiyue, she couldn't bear to be so ruthless. Give me a bit of time. Han Yunqing said as she strode out the door. She had to calm down. Perhaps she'd be able to come up with a better plan. Han Yunqing didn't go far before she sat down on the stone steps by the front door. Her hands were pressed together against her forehead to hide her worried expression. Although her expression was hidden, her entire person seemed to have dimmed. Her former confidence and splendor were nowhere to be found. Long Feiyi watched her from a distance, a trace of dissatisfaction rising to his cold eyes. He really didn't like this woman's gloomy look, especially when she was sad because of a man. Despite his dissatisfaction, Long Feiyi remained calm. Some things could be settled later. He'd spent so much effort on Gu Beiyue that he couldn't leave empty-handed. Gu Beiyue knew martial arts, but Gu Beiyue hadn't been able to sense his pulse. That was proof enough that his martial arts skills were extremely high. Moreover, he'd been able to keep his cool during the 2 dangerous situations he'd faced so far. He hadn't even tried to save Han Yunqing or himself. That was enough to prove how deep Gu Beiyue's heart was. If they hadn't bumped into each other that time, perhaps Long Feiyi would have let Gu Beiyue go this time. But that was because he'd confirmed that Gu Beiyue knew martial arts. Long Feiyi wouldn't show any mercy. He wouldn't allow such a person of unknown origins to be hiding in Tianning's capital city, much less allow such a person to exist by Han Yunqing's side. The arrow had entered his dantian by a fraction. With his body's current condition, the only way was to use his internal energy to force it out. He wanted to see whether Gu Beiyue would choose to die or expose himself. Long Fei's icy gaze shifted away from Han Yunqing as he continued to wait without a word. Han Yunqing shut her eyes as she thought and thought. The more she thought, the more agitated she became. She knew there wasn't much time left. But she was so annoyed that she stood up abruptly. However, at this moment, she suddenly remembered something. Gu Beiyue had once been struck in the heart by Gu's plum blossom needle at the Han estate. Fortunately, it hadn't hit him directly, but had missed by a hair's breadth. Back then, she hadn't dared to cut him open, so she'd used poison to neutralize the plum blossom needle to save his life. Heavens, how could she have forgotten something so important? This time, she could use the same method. Using poison to neutralize the arrow, then neutralize the poison in time. She'd already used such an ingenious method on Gu Beiyue, so why hadn't she thought of it? That's great. Han Yunqing was so excited that she was jumping up and down in the courtyard. She was so happy that even Long Feiyi could sense her joy from afar. Long Feiyi's eyes had already narrowed into slits. Seeing this, the guards on the side couldn't help but worry for their esteemed Wang Fei. Han Yunqing quickly entered the room. I have an idea. There's no need to pull out the arrow. Everyone looked over in disbelief. Imperial Physician Huang was the most excited of all. Esteemed Wang Fei, what good idea do you have? The same old method. Han Yunqing smiled mysteriously. Gu Beiyue's lips curved into a smile that no one noticed, as if he'd known all along. All of you, get out. Zhao Mama, close the windows and close the door. Han Yunqing didn't have time to explain. She gave orders as she took out the poison, antidote, and other necessities. Imperial Physician Huang couldn't figure it out. Esteemed Wang Fei, you, Imperial Physician Huang, it's fine, don't worry, Gu Beiyue said weakly. Han Yunqing was amused. You remembered it too? Gu Beiyue nodded with a grin. No one understood the tacit understanding between the two of them. Chu Shifeng's mouth twitched at the sight. He was curious about Han Yunqing's self-confidence while feeling conflicted. He didn't know how to report this to his master outside. One had to know that for this test, Master had spent a lot of effort. Not to mention how many death warriors and shadow guards had been sacrificed in order to make this matter real. Even that long-distance and incomparably accurate arrow had consumed a lot of internal energy. Chu Shifeng waited by the door, silently praying to the gods in his heart, please let that woman who combines wisdom and stupidity fail. Would Han Yunqing fail? No one knew yet. Long Fei Yi had risen to his feet at some point. He saw that the doors and windows of the guest room were shut tight and that a group of people were waiting by the door. In other words, Han Yunqing and Gu Beiyue were alone in the same room. After all, Gu Beiyue's injury was in his dantian region, which was 3 inches below his navel. How was that woman planning to save Gu Beiyue? Long Fei Ye's cool-headedness wouldn't lose to Gu Beiyue's, but under these circumstances, it was very, very dangerous. Suddenly, Zhao Mama cried out from the doorway. Not good. Everyone jumped in fright. Imperial physician Huang asked urgently, Zhao Mama, what's wrong? Zhao Mama finally remembered where the arrow had struck. Everyone had been too flustered just then. Moreover, esteemed Wang Fei had only sprinkled medicine around the arrowhead to stop Imperial physician Gu's bleeding. No one had noticed anything amiss. But as soon as the doors and windows were shut, Zhao Mama realized that something bad had happened. Chapter 345. This was bad. Aside from Imperial physician Gu and esteemed Wang Fei herself, no one knew how esteemed Wang Fei was going to deal with the arrow. However, everyone knew that the wound was 3 inches below the navel. No matter what method was used, the next step after stopping the bleeding was to take off his pants. Important things had to be said 3 times. This kind of thing absolutely could not happen. Especially in the Duke of Qin's residence. Zhao Mama was so anxious that she couldn't care less. She hurriedly pushed open the door, but who knew that a sudden gust of wind would push the door open before she could. Before anyone could react, Long Fei Yi had already entered the room, leaving everyone with a murderous look. The terrified Zhao Mama instantly let out a sigh of relief. However, she quickly sucked in a cold breath. That's not right. Wasn't this His Highness Duke of Qin? He actually came back. What a coincidence. Something was wrong. Zhao Mama and the other people around her were all stunned. No one had expected that this mysterious and cold-faced prince would appear at this time. Separated by a large screen, Han Yunqing couldn't see who had come in. At this time, she was seriously weighing the amount of poison, preparing to use it. During the treatment process, the most annoying thing was to be disturbed, especially this time. Gu Beiyue wasn't poisoned, so the detoxification system couldn't give an accurate analysis. Han Yunqing had to estimate the amount of poison based on the length of the arrow. This was definitely a complicated process that required meticulous care. No one could disturb her. As soon as the door was pushed open, Han Yunqing was distracted. Several numbers were mixed together. Depressing. She didn't care who had come in. She angrily shouted, "Get out!" Long Fei Ye's footsteps came to an abrupt halt. Without exception, everyone outside the door was dumbfounded and scared silly. So there was actually someone who dared to talk to His Highness Duke of Qin like this. No, not talk, but roar. Wasn't this mistress a bit too manly? Inside the room, it was completely silent. Separated by the screen, Han Yunqing could only see that the door was still open. She furrowed her brows and was very angry. She could treat him in an environment where there were disturbances, but that was because she had no other choice. She had always relied on the detoxification system to calculate and rarely did her own calculations. Today's situation was very special. Who is it? Get out, you hear me? She shouted again. This king. Finally, Long Fei Yi opened his mouth. His voice seemed to come from the depths of hell, causing everyone's hair to stand on end. This king? No, it's Long Fei Yi. Han Yunqing jumped in fright. Her hands went limp, and the poison slid to the ground. With a plop sound, it broke into pieces. Long Fei Yi slowly walked around the screen and walked out. His already cold face was covered with a layer of frost. Han Yunqing only felt that the surrounding temperature suddenly dropped to 0, and the air was thin. Why did this guy suddenly come back? She swore that she definitely didn't do it on purpose. If she knew that it was him, she wouldn't have dared to shout like that even if she was beaten to death. Long Feiyi glanced at Han Yunqing with an expressionless face. He looked up and down, from the shattered poison on the ground to Han Yunqing's hands, then to Gu Beiyue's face, body, and wounds. Gu Beiyue lay on the bed, his face pale. His eyes were slightly open, and his consciousness was drifting. Facing Long Feiyi's domineering gaze, he was a bit anxious and struggled to open his eyes. Duke of Qin. Your Highness Duke of Qin, forgive this humble subject for not being able to, he should have gotten off the bed to pay his respects, but he was too weak to even explain. Long Feiyi clearly knew what he wanted to say, but he let him speak with difficulty and ignored him. Long Feiyi ignored him, but Gu Beiyue couldn't stop. He was a subject, and he was a king. The hierarchy was there. Your Highness Duke of Qin, please forgive. Gu Beiyue could only continue weakly. After Long Feiyi examined them one by one, his gaze returned to Han Yunqing's face. Han Yunqing couldn't help but shiver. Your Highness, Long Feiyi looked meaningfully at the tightly shut doors and windows before sitting down. Aren't you in a hurry to save someone? Why aren't you continuing? She was most afraid that he wouldn't speak, because the consequences of him attacking without saying a word had been quite frightening. Now that he spoke, even her breathing became much smoother. This concubine didn't know that your highness had returned. Imperial physician Gu is injured and can't salute. Han Yunqing took the opportunity to explain on behalf of Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue nodded with a smile at Long Feiyi. Long Feiyi didn't even look at him, but he was still very calm. Saving someone is more important. Continue. Saving someone was indeed more important. Seeing that Long Feiyi didn't seem to be unhappy, Han Yunqing reined in her thoughts and recalculated the dosage. Long Feiyi didn't say a word until Han Yunqing finished preparing the antidote. Then he spoke again. What are you doing? Poisoning, then detoxifying. Use the poison to dissolve the arrowhead in Imperial Physician Gu's dantian. As Han Yunqing spoke, she was afraid that Long Feiyi didn't understand, so she hurriedly explained, this method doesn't require drawing the sword. It won't cause a second injury, and it won't endanger his life. There's also no need to worry about excessive bleeding. As soon as she said this, Long Feiyi almost exploded no matter how patient he was. Excellent. Excellent. He racked his brains to think of a good method to test Gu Beiyue. Even with Gu Beiyue's excellent medical skills, he couldn't do anything about it. Han Yunqing actually solved it just like that. It's indeed a good method. Long Feiyi was still very calm. At the side, Gu Beiyue couldn't help but smile. It was especially beautiful. It wasn't that Han Yunqing was insensitive, but that Long Feiyi really didn't show his emotions. He asked coldly again, then how do we poison him? Just drink it. Han Yunqing answered honestly. How do we detoxify him? Long Feiyi continued to ask. Han Yunqing said without thinking, take the antidote, then use acupuncture to let the poison flow out. How do we use acupuncture? Long Feiyi continued to ask. It's as Han Yunqing spoke, she suddenly realized that something was wrong. Her gaze subconsciously drifted to Gu Beiyue's abdomen. Long Feiyi's fists suddenly clenched in his sleeves as he waited for Han Yunqing to continue speaking. She was searching for an acupoint under Gu Beiyue's abdomen. If it were any other time, even if she was searching for an acupoint in a more private area, Han Yunqing would be able to say it openly. Because her heart was open, she really didn't have any scruples. However, facing Long Feiyi's questioning, she realized that for the first time, she didn't dare to speak frankly. Previously, she had told Granny Zhao that she wanted to make a certain someone unhappy. At this moment, The great opportunity was right in front of her eyes, but Han Yunqing was listless. She threw away her lofty words and aspirations completely. She was even worried that this guy would be unhappy and misunderstand her. "What are you doing?" Long Feiyi continued to ask. Gu Beiyue lay on the side with a faint smile and didn't say a word. Han Yunqing was still quite quick-witted as she hurriedly replied, 3 inches below the abdomen, searching for an acupoint to perform acupuncture around the dantian. There are only a few acupoints, and they are all ordinary acupoints. After Imperial Physician Gu takes the antidote, Imperial Physician Huang can come in and perform the acupuncture. There shouldn't be any loopholes in this explanation, right? Han Yunqing was very nervous. Unexpectedly, Long Feiyi asked again, "Then what about now? Does this prince also get lost?" Han Yunqing's little face stiffened as she hurriedly explained, "Your Highness, because this concubine needs to concoct the poison, I have to calculate the dosage. If I'm disturbed, it's easy to make mistakes, so, this concubine didn't know that Your Highness was coming back. It's really impolite." Long Feiyi stood up. "Since that's the case, this prince will leave first." He turned to leave after speaking. "That's it?" Han Yunqing was very surprised. Could it be that she was thinking too much? But it didn't seem like it. She was very confused. Seeing Long Feiyi really leave, Han Yunqing thought that she was thinking too much. She took a deep breath and gathered her thoughts. It was more important to save the person first. After Long Feiyi left, his face was as ugly as it could be. Not to mention the people outside, even Long Feiyi himself didn't think that Han Yunqing would really let him come out. This woman was very good. Han Yunqing silently concocted the medicine, applied the poison, and detoxified the poison. Then she seriously prepared the gold needles. "Esteemed Princess Consort, it's been hard on you," Gu Beiyue lightly said. Han Yunqing was too focused, so she didn't hear him. Gu Beiyue smiled and didn't say anything else. After preparing the gold needles, Han Yunqing didn't delay any longer and immediately called Dr. Huang in. Dr. Huang wasn't the only one that came in, everyone except for Long Feiyi. Han Yunqing didn't see Long Feiyi and her heart filled with a trace of uneasiness. However, she didn't delay because of this. Although Gu Beiyue had already taken the antidote, if he didn't use this time to expel the poison, there would be a big problem. Han Yunqing patiently explained to Dr. Huang in detail how to use the needles, including the number, position, and strength. She explained everything very clearly. After all, expelling the poison was different from normal acupuncture. Dr. Huang asked a few more questions before understanding everything. After explaining everything, Han Yunqing and Granny Zhao both left. Not to mention Han Yunqing, even Granny Zhao had forgotten the bold words she had heard before. She was just as scared as Han Yunqing. Long Feiyi stood at the door with his hands clasped behind his back. "Your Highness." Han Yunqing carefully came to his side. "Is it cured?" Long Feiyi asked. "Dr. Huang is performing the acupuncture. It's not a big problem," Han Yunqing honestly replied. Granny Zhao gently tugged on Han Yunqing's clothes, hinting that His Highness was clearly angry. Han Yunqing wasn't stupid. She could obviously see it. She felt that she should explain something, but when she opened her mouth, she didn't know what to say. She didn't do anything. She did everything to save a life. Although she didn't notice the location of the wound, even if Long Feiyi didn't come, she would have noticed the problem in the end. She wouldn't have personally performed the acupuncture. She had already been warned by him several times. She understood her own status and the women's way he spoke of. Moreover, even if she wanted to perform the acupuncture, Gu Beiyue wouldn't let her. After a moment of silence, Long Feiyi spoke first, "Come with this prince." He was about to leave after speaking, but Han Yunqing didn't move. "Your Highness, Dr. Huang is still performing the acupuncture. This concubine can't leave for the time being." Although there was no problem, with Dr. Huang's acupuncture skills, there was no need to worry. However, to be cautious, Han Yunqing still had to stay to prevent any accidents from happening. This was the most basic quality of a doctor. Chapter 346. He said she didn't need to go. Looking at Long Fei's receding figure without looking back, Han Yunqing suddenly felt like she'd been abandoned. Her heart felt stifled and uncomfortable for no reason. Long Fei had asked her so many questions in the room, so she knew he minded and was angry. She knew that the consequences would be severe if she didn't go with him now, but she didn't. On one side was Gu Beiyue's life, while on the other was Long Fei Ye's feelings. No matter what, life was more important than feelings. She wasn't so emotional as to ignore Gu Beiyue's life. Long Fei's figure had already vanished from sight, but Han Yunqing was still staring at him. Nobody knew that she was the one who suffered the most after making such a choice. Zhao Mama was stunned for a long time before she recovered her wits and grabbed Han Yunqing by the hem of her robes. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness isn't happy. His Highness is very unhappy. Zhao Mama finally remembered esteemed Wang Fei's words. Didn't she want His Highness to be unhappy? She even said she'd keep Gu Beiyue here until he recovered. If His Highness was unhappy, esteemed Wang Fei should be happy. Zhao Mama suddenly grew excited. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness really isn't happy. But Han Yunqing was so depressed that she didn't hear what Zhao Mama was saying. At this moment, Chu Shifeng ran out of the room and asked, Esteemed Wang Fei, can your method really save us from having to pull out the arrow? Han Yunqing recovered her wits and asked urgently, what's the situation? Inside the room, Imperial Physician Huang had already started using needles. The arrow had already snapped, and Chu Shifeng could see black blood flowing out. Esteemed Wang Fei, answer my question first. Chu Shifeng said urgently. Did the needles not go smoothly? Han Yunqing was worried about the situation inside the room. After all, she'd run into a few accidents in her career as a detoxifier, all of which had happened while she was using needles. Everything's going smoothly. He's bleeding black blood. Chu Shifeng's tone was filled with irritation. Han Yunqing heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. Everything went well. As long as the black blood is clean, the wound will be treated. Chu Shifeng gave a start. For a moment, he didn't know what to say to his mistress. When he heard the Princess Consort and Dr. Huang's explanation, he did not believe that there was a way to cure the poison without pulling out the arrow. He never thought that it would work and it would take effect this quickly. This was a scheme that His Highness had painstakingly set up. It wasn't good for anyone to ruin it, but why did it have to be the Princess Consort? Chu Shifeng couldn't imagine the expression on his master's face right now. After a while, Chu Shifeng finally asked, Esteemed Wang Fei, where's His Highness? Han Yunqing sighed softly and did not answer. She leaned against the wall and crossed her arms. Her expression was silent as she waited calmly. If everything went smoothly, Imperial Physician Huang should be out in less than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. Once Chu Shifeng left, only Gu Beiyue and Imperial Physician Huang were left in the room. Imperial Physician Huang had long put away his needles, while Gu Beiyue's abdomen was wrapped in a wide layer of white gauze. He was half leaning against a high pillow and tying his robes. He seemed to be thin, but his chest was refined and hard, and it was faintly discernible from his half-exposed clothes. Coupled with his elegant and otherworldly face, he had an indescribable charm that caused one's imagination to run wild. Since you've already found her, why didn't you take her away? Imperial Physician Huang asked in a low voice. Although Imperial Physician Huang was Gu Beiyue's subordinate in the Imperial Physician Courtyard, he was actually Gu Beiyue's grandfather's sworn brother. In a way, he had watched Gu Beiyue grow up. Gu Beiyue sighed softly without replying. The Duke of Qin must be suspecting you, Imperial Physician Huang said next. No, he must know something and wants to know more. Gu Beiyue hadn't realized that Long Fei Yi was behind today's assassination either. After all, everything had been too realistic. He only had his suspicions in the end, until Long Fei Yi showed up. Then he was certain that both the assassination attempt and the arrows had come from Long Fei Yi. Then why aren't you leaving? Imperial Physician Huang grew anxious. Gu Beiyue looked towards the door for a long time before saying, the 7 noble families are making more and more moves. It's safest for her to stay at the Duke of Qin's estate. Sometimes, protection didn't mean personal protection. Letting go was also a form of protection. Imperial Physician Huang was about to coax him when someone knocked on the door. Imperial Physician Huang, are you done yet? It was none other than Han Yunqing herself. It had been about the time it took to brew a cup of tea, so she should be done by now. All right, esteemed Wang Fei, come in. Everything went smoothly. Imperial Physician Huang hurriedly shouted. Everyone thought that Han Yunqing would push open the door and come in, but who knew that she would say, it's good that everything went smoothly. I'll have to trouble Imperial Physician Huang to change the medicine again in 4 hours. After she finished speaking, she quickly turned around and ran in the direction that Long Fei Yi had disappeared. Old Man thought that she had already left. Imperial Physician Huang didn't expect that even after Long Fei Yi had left, Han Yunqing would still be standing guard outside the door. I thought. Gu Beiyue wanted to say something, but hesitated. Then he slowly closed his eyes. Zhao Mama chased after Han Yunqing all the way to Hibiscus Courtyard. It was unknown what she suddenly realized, but she tiptoed and her figure quickly disappeared into the flowers. At this time, Han Yunqing was at the door of Long Fei Ye's sleeping quarters. She had asked the hidden guards, and they confirmed that Long Fei Yi was inside. She knocked on the door, but unfortunately, there was no response. Your Highness! Your Highness! She shouted a few times, but there was no response. She tried to push the door, but it was locked and she couldn't open it. Your Highness, I didn't do anything, she was about to explain, but who knew that Zhao Mama would suddenly pop out from the bushes and wave at her. Han Yunqing suspiciously walked over. What is it? His Highness is unhappy, unhappy. Zhao Mama emphasized again. Han Yunqing was too lazy to pay attention to her. She wasn't an idiot. She had already seen that he was unhappy. Just as she was about to leave, Zhao Mama anxiously pulled her back. She lowered her voice and imitated Han Yunqing's tone that night. She emphasized again, esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness, unhappy, unhappy. Han Yunqing gave a start before her eyes widened. She finally realized what was going on. That's right, didn't she already want to make this guy unhappy? She hadn't done anything yet, but this guy was already unhappy. So, esteemed Wang Fei, this old servant already said that His Highness has you in his heart. Look, he's overflowing with vinegar. Zhao Mama was especially happy. Han Yunqing was overjoyed. She pursed her lips to prevent herself from smiling, but her heart was already overjoyed. Esteemed Wang Fei, why don't you make His Highness Duke of Qin even more unhappy? Zhao Mama secretly instigated. With her master's temper, she had to fan the flames a bit more. As long as you have the heart, everything will be fine. Han Yunqing's eyes curved into 2 crescent moons from smiling. She returned to the main entrance and knocked again. Your Highness, are you not in? If there's nothing important, I'll be going back. Imperial Physician Gu's condition isn't very stable yet. There was still no response. This time, Han Yunqing didn't wait any longer. She turned and left. But just as she walked into the corridor, she saw Long Fei Yi standing in front of her with his back to her. Actually, even Zhao Mama didn't know how nervous she was at this moment. She was afraid that Long Fei Yi still wouldn't appear. Fortunately, he came. Han Yunqing deliberately played dumb. Your Highness, why did you ask this concubine to come over? She couldn't see Long Fei Ye's expression. She could only hear his cold and emotionless voice. Didn't I say that you didn't need to come over? Oh. Han Yunqing walked to his side and said, then, it shouldn't be anything important, right? The entire corridor was silent. Long Fei Yi didn't speak for a long time. Han Yunqing waited patiently, her heart filled with all kinds of expectations. How would he answer? But who knew that after waiting for a while, Long Fei Yi only softly replied, Amen. He actually turned around and walked away with his back to her. This time, Han Yunqing couldn't even see his back. Her heart skipped a beat. She was clearly putting on an act to make him unhappy, but when he took it seriously, her heart actually hurt. Long Fei, did Xiao Mama and I both see wrongly? You're not unhappy, but just cold and detached. Han Yunqing's heart ached, but she wasn't afraid. Since she chose to be brave, then she must be brave to the end. Her lips curved into a fearless smile. She elegantly turned around and shouted, Your Highness, if there's nothing important, this concubine will go to the guest room. Imperial Physician Gu's injuries are serious. This concubine has already applied for sick leave on his behalf. I plan to keep him here until he recovers. Actually, if today's assassination hadn't happened, Han Yunqing would have waited for Gu Beiyue to wake up and rest for a day before sending him back to the Gu estate. She had always been straightforward and didn't like to drag things out. She also didn't like ambiguous relationships. Gu Beiyue had always been respectful to her and had never been rude. She saved Gu Beiyue completely out of friendship. Gu Beiyue had helped her a lot, and it was also because of her that the Empress Dowager had made things difficult for him. It was reasonable for her to keep Gu Beiyue here to recuperate. If Xiao Mama hadn't reminded her, she wouldn't have thought about the propriety of men and women touching. Finally, Long Fei Yi stopped walking. Coldly, he said, Han Yunqing, it's not up to you to decide whether or not to keep people in the estate. Didn't your highness say that this concubine will be responsible for all matters in the estate? Han Yunqing retorted. Long Fei Yi turned around. His face was as cold as ice without a trace of emotion. From now on, there's no need. Oh. Han Yunqing didn't say anything else. In front of Long Fei Yi, she turned around and left. That's right, she didn't even look back as she left, leaving Long Fei Yi standing alone in the hallway. He didn't move for a long time. Xiao Mama, who was hiding on the side, felt her heart jump out of her chest. These two masters, one was more stubborn than the other. She almost suspected that the Princess Consort wasn't acting, but rather, she wasn't happy. When Han Yunqing's figure completely disappeared, Long Fei Ye's fists clenched so tightly that they cracked. He had never been so angry in his life. However, he still stood in place and didn't have any intention of chasing after Han Yunqing. Han Yunqing returned to her room and immediately had the servants prepare a carriage to send Gu Beiyue back to the estate. Princess Consort, Imperial Physician Gu, shouldn't be in a good condition right now. Even Imperial Physician Huang could see that something was wrong with Han Yunqing, let alone Gu Beiyue. It's fine. Gu Beiyue covered his wound as he stood up. He was neither servile nor overbearing. Princess Consort, this official still has important matters to take care of at home. I will definitely visit you in the future to thank you for saving my life. Chapter 347. If this was any other day, Han Yunqing would have personally helped Gu Beiyue off the bed. To a modern doctor, this was nothing. Although she knew there were many rules between men and women in ancient times, she still ignored them most of the time. It was impossible for her to consider every detail. But this time, Han Yunqing didn't help him. She only said, Imperial Physician Gu, take care of your injuries. Then she instructed Chu Shifeng, send Imperial Physician Gu back. Make sure to take good care of him on the way. If Chu Shifeng hadn't been ordered to keep an eye on Gu Beiyue, he would have chased after Han Yunqing like Xiao Mama. Even now, he had no idea what had happened between his mistress and His Highness. He could only pretend he didn't know a thing. This subordinate obeys. He helped Gu Beiyue off the bed and left with Imperial Physician Huang. Xiao Mama was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. She didn't even know what esteemed Wang Fei was thinking. She never expected esteemed Wang Fei to really send Gu Beiyue away. Could it be that she was not going to play anymore? Can't continue. Is she going to apologize to His Highness Duke of Qin next? Esteemed Wang Fei liked His Highness Duke of Qin a lot, but she couldn't be so shameless and unprincipled. This isn't like esteemed Wang Fei at all. Rather than apologize now, she might as well not have played this game in the first place. Granny Zhao felt that she had to do something before esteemed Wang Fei arrived. She pondered for a moment before saying, "Your Highness." Esteemed Wang Fei almost fainted when she saw Imperial Physician Gu being punished in the palace. Long Fei Yi was focused on reading the secret letter sent by messenger pigeon and didn't react. Although Xiao Mama knew her master's self-control, she couldn't keep her cool right now. How could he be so calm? Could it be that after the princess consort sent Imperial Physician Gu away, this matter would be forgotten? Xiao Mama felt that His Highness Duke of Qin had misgivings about esteemed Wang Fei, but she couldn't pinpoint the exact reason. Regardless of whether she had scruples or not, the situation in front of her made Granny Zhao feel indignant. She continued, "In the palace, Imperial Physician Gu couldn't even get up. It was the princess consort who personally helped him up." In the dim light, Long Fei Ye's side profile looked particularly cold. However, he was still as indifferent as when he was facing Han Yunqing. "Master, in this old servant's opinion, the princess consort has always been good to Imperial Physician Gu, right? Master, the relationship between Imperial Physician Gu and the princess consort should be very good, right? Master, Imperial Physician Gu's medical skills are superb. He must have a lot in common with princess consort, right?" Granny Zhao asked 3 questions in a row, but Long Fei Yi didn't even look at her. Granny Zhao couldn't hold it in any longer and wanted to make things clear. Who knew that at this moment, a secret guard would rush in and report, "Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei has packed her bags and is going out. She said that she will be staying at the Gu residence for 2 days." As soon as he finished speaking, Long Fei Yi abruptly stood up and angrily asked, "Where is she?" What a good Han Yunqing. She had sent Gu Beiyue away and he had been waiting for her to explain herself. Who knew that she would have such intentions? She wanted to go to the Gu residence. What an audacious woman. Long Fei Ye's figure flashed and disappeared in an instant. Granny Zhao took a long time to react and sucked in a cold breath. She finally understood what esteemed Wang Fei meant. She really dared. Only she could make His Highness Duke of Qin, who was as calm as ice, lose his mind and explode. At this moment, Han Yunqing had already packed her bags and was about to leave the leisurely cloud pavilion. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind hit her in the face. Han Yunqing subconsciously retreated, only to see Long Fei Ye's tall and proud figure appear in front of her. His powerful aura suddenly overwhelmed her, making it difficult for her to breathe. "Where are you going?" he personally asked. "The Gu estate." She really dared to answer without hesitation. She even added, "Imperial Physician Gu's injuries haven't healed yet, so I'm going to take care of him for a few days." Long Fei Ye's face darkened and his fists clenched so tightly that they cracked. Monstrous anger roiled in his heart. "What did you say?" Han Yunqing really did have guts. She actually repeated herself. "Imperial Physician Gu's injuries haven't healed yet, so I'm going to take care of him for a few days." As soon as she finished speaking, Long Fei Yi suddenly threw a punch. It brushed past Han Yunqing's head and the wind from his punch was so fierce that Han Yunqing's cheeks burned. The dignified Qin Wang Fei is going to take care of an imperial physician. Han Yunqing, do you even put this prince in your eyes? Long Feiyi finally questioned her. A trace of craftiness flitted through Han Yunqing's eyes. She lowered her head and didn't speak. Long Fei lifted her chin and forced her to look him in the eye. Answer your lordship's question. Imperial physician Gu's injuries really are serious. I'm worried that, before Han Yunqing could finish speaking, Long Feiyi suddenly tightened his grip on her chin, preventing her from continuing. Long Feiyi stared intently at Han Yunqing. Although he didn't speak, his normally calm breathing became especially rapid. His chest was filled with anger that was about to explode. Han Yunqing's chin hurt from being pinched. Faced with Long Feiyi's stare, she chose to close her eyes and ignore him. It was this action that completely infuriated Long Feiyi. This time, he didn't force a kiss on her and didn't remain silent. Instead, he angrily asked, Han Yunqing, you like Gu Beiyue? It wasn't like her skimming the surface of the water like a dragonfly, but it was his usual domineering and forceful manner. In an instant, he drove straight in with passion like fire. Such a cold person kissed so intensely. It was as if all the repressed emotions in his heart were buried in this entanglement of lips and teeth. Gradually, he hugged her and led her close to him. She also unconsciously wrapped her arms around him, feeling his real presence. Both of them were willing, and the kiss lasted for a long time. In the early winter evening, the golden afterglow of the afterglow filled the courtyard of Leisurely Cloud Pavilion. It coated the bodies of the people kissing and hugging each other with a faint golden glow. Everything seemed sacred and beautiful. Long Feiyi didn't answer Han Yunqing's question. Perhaps this kiss was the best answer. She was completely satisfied. Su Xiaoyu secretly leaned against the window and watched the warm scene in the courtyard. She was secretly amazed that His Highness Duke of Qin could have such a gentle side. It was inappropriate for children, but she couldn't take her eyes off them. When she saw that the Duke of Qin's kiss had landed on Han Yunqing's jade neck, she immediately became excited. Perhaps there would be a good show to watch. It was said that no matter how strong a man was, when he was deeply involved, his guard would be at its lowest. Perhaps she would be able to see what she wanted to see today, and then she would be able to give her master an explanation. Helpless, Long Feiyi only lightly pecked Han Yunqing's jade neck, and everything came to an abrupt end. This man's self-control was simply heaven-defying. However, Han Yunqing was even more heaven-defying than him. She didn't even think in that direction. She was immersed in Long Feiyi's objections and was still incomparably happy. There won't be a next time. Long Feiyi warned. Han Yunqing bit her lip and giggled foolishly. She didn't dare to look at him. Long Feiyi's eyes flickered with helplessness. He didn't know what to do with this woman. Although he was a little reluctant, he still released her in the end. Why aren't you putting the luggage back yet? Han Yunqing couldn't help but burst into laughter. Long Feiyi's face immediately turned icy as he turned his back on her. Your lordship still has things to take care of. As soon as he finished speaking, he left as if he was fleeing. He really did have things to take care of. The Tang clan had been sending him countless messenger pigeons, but that idiot Tang Li still hadn't escaped. As soon as Long Feiyi reached his study, a guard handed him 3 secret missives. Long Feiyi stood by the window, but didn't open them immediately. Instead, he looked towards the Leisurely Cloud Pavilion. He stroked his thin lips with his fingertips and couldn't help but let out a self-deprecating smile. At this moment, Chu Shifeng returned from the Gu estate. Chapter 348. After sending Gu Beiyue to the Gu estate, Chu Shifeng hurried back without even going inside. He wanted to know how his master would react when he found out that Gu Beiyue was all right. He felt that Han Yunqing didn't need to use other methods to make His Highness unhappy anymore. Saving Gu Beiyue was enough to touch His Highness's bottom line. When Chu Shifeng appeared in front of His Highness Duke of Qin and saw him calmly reading the secret missives, he was astonished. Timidly, he tried to sound him out. "Your Highness, Gu Beiyue's already returned safe and sound." Long Fei Yi replied mildly. "That's it?" Chu Shifeng grew doubtful. "That doesn't make sense." His Highness had been keeping an eye on Gu Beiyue for a long time. It was a rare chance, and he even paid such a huge price. Why didn't His Highness get angry at all? Did something happen? Chu Shifeng retreated and immediately asked Zhao Mama, who was grinning from ear to ear. "Esteemed Wang Fei has plenty of ways to deal with His Highness. Keep bragging." Just what happened? Chu Shifeng refused to believe it. With His Highness's personality, he'd be very calm even before the woman he liked. Esteemed Wang Fei has an ultimate move. Once she does, His Highness will definitely be docile. Zhao Mama was in a good mood. Zhao Mama. Chu Shifeng grew anxious. Only then did Zhao Mama explain to him in a low voice. Chu Shifeng could only gape at her words. He couldn't believe that any woman in this world would dare to tease His Highness like this. No wonder he didn't pursue the matter. He muttered to himself. He couldn't help but wonder if Han Yunqing set the Duke of Qin's estate on fire one day. Would she be able to settle His Highness with a kiss, too? Women really are strong. The Tang clan's secret missives kept coming in. Long Fei Yi wouldn't make it even if he rushed over now, so he could only leave Tang Li to fend for himself. Heaven knows if Tang Li would be depressed to death if he found out why Long Fei Yi had suddenly rushed back. In the dead of the night, the leisurely cloud pavilion and the sleeping quarters were pitch black. No one was sleeping. Han Yunqing leaned against the window with one hand supporting her chin and the other rubbing her lips. She was still smiling foolishly. That guy did mind. Mind was something that could be understood but not explained. Han Yunqing used to care so much about Duan Muyao. She couldn't help but wonder if Long Fei Yi felt the same way she did back then. It was really a blissful thing to be bothered by someone she had liked for so long. It was as if she had finally realized that the person she liked also liked her at the same time. When the time is peaceful, I talk with you. When the world is in dispute, I conspire with you. When prosperity falls, I grow old with you. He was willing to win the heart of his woman, and never leave her even in old age. Long Fei Yi, if you mind, it's a sunny day. In the bedchamber, Long Fei Yi reclined on a rocking chair with a wine cup in his hand. He silently looked out the window. It was unclear whether he was looking at the leisurely cloud pavilion or at the crescent moon on the treetops. After a long time, he calmly said, "Is there any news about the bear chuan and panoptic red lotus?" Serpent fruit, bear chuan, and panoptic red lotus. These three herbs were used to cure mute granny's poison. To him, there was nothing more important than finding these three herbs. The only thing he was certain of was that the serpent fruit was in Gu Qisha's hands. As for the other two herbs, there was still no news. A shadow guard emerged from the darkness. "Reporting to Your Highness, there has been no news. We only found out that the bear chuan appeared at the auction. We're still investigating the specifics." Long Fei Yi waved his hand, indicating for the shadow guard to withdraw. He knew very well that these three herbs were not easy to find. Now, he just had to wait for Tang Li to escape with the torrential pear blossoms. He was determined to get the serpent fruit. The night deepened, but a figure continued to wander around the Duke of Qin's estate. The coquettish red robes had an indescribable beauty to them. It was like a spider lily slowly blooming in the darkness, mysterious and noble. It wasn't until dawn that the red figure landed on the roof of a nearby inn. There weren't many people in the world who dared to wander around the Duke of Qin's estate for so long, and Gu was one of them. He had wandered around for an entire night, but was still unable to sneak into the Duke of Qin's estate without being detected by the shadow guards. He remembered that he had gone in a few times a few months ago. God knows when Long Fei had strengthened the defenses. I miss my poison lass. He muttered to himself as he lazily laid down on the roof with his hands behind his head. Of course, he wasn't just thinking about poison lass. He was also here to test her. As for what he was testing, only he knew. He hadn't slept for long when a carrier pigeon woke him up. Mu Ling had sent him a letter. Mu Ling had promised him to find the Bear Chuan and Panoptic Red Lotus. He didn't know where Mu Ling could find them. In short, he hadn't seen Mu Ling since that time. As Gu opened the letter, he wondered if he could get Mu Ling to find a medicinal ingredient that could never be found. Would that lass never bother him again? Thinking of this, he smiled to himself. For the next few days, Long Fei didn't leave the Duke of Qin's estate. When he was in the estate, Han Yunqing basically didn't go out. This was the first time Han Yunqing saw Long Fei practice swordsmanship. He was dressed in white robes and waved the silver sword in his hand. He moved with the sword, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Slashing, stabbing, poking, piercing, lifting, every movement was clean and nimble. Han Yunqing couldn't understand what he was doing, but she felt that he was too handsome. Long Fei practiced for an entire afternoon, but Han Yunqing watched for an entire afternoon as well. If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't cultivate inner strength, she would have asked Long Fei to teach her swordsmanship. When she saw Long Fei stop, she immediately politely handed him a cup of water, just like a personal attendant. Actually, she had a lot of things to do. However, it was rare for him to stay in the estate, so she wanted to stay by his side. Is Bailey Mingxiang taking the medicine going smoothly? Long Fei asked indifferently. After that incident, that day, he was basically the same as before. He didn't make any special changes, as if nothing had happened. Of course, to outsiders, that was indeed the case. However, Han Yunqing felt that the two of them were much closer. At least, she could harass him without fear. Everything is going smoothly, but, Han Yunqing hesitated for a moment, but still said, Your Highness, this young lady isn't easy. I want to try and save her. Although no one knew what would happen to Bailey Mingxiang after the beauty's blood was cultivated, based on Han Yunqing's poison knowledge, Bailey Mingxiang wouldn't survive. It was just that the method of death was uncertain. Seeing Long Fei frown, Han Yunqing hurriedly explained, I guarantee that it won't affect the beauty's blood. Long Fei only replied with 3 words, do as you wish. To him, Bailey Mingxiang was just one of his many subordinates. He had even almost forgotten what she looked like. Your Highness, is there any news about Mute Granny? Han Yunqing hadn't forgotten about this matter. She was also thinking about the white-robed man from the Shadow Clan. As for her identity, there seemed to be no news about it after the disappearance of Mute Granny and the white-robed man. Sometimes, she would rather be Han Konggan's daughter, the Han family's legitimate daughter. She wouldn't have so many secrets. The more secrets there were, the more conspiracies there would be, and the more danger there would be. She still suspected that Lady Tianxin's difficult birth was caused by someone who wanted to kill her in her mother's womb. If she didn't find out what happened to Lady Tianxin and who her father was, how could she be at ease? There's no news. The possibility of finding it isn't high. You'd better not have too much hope. Long Fei said indifferently. Han Yunqing didn't say anything. Thinking about Mute Granny, she was filled with guilt. She said indifferently, Your Highness, of the 3 herbs, the serpent fruit has been found. As soon as she said this, Long Fei's calm eyes flashed. Serpent fruit? Han Yunqing took it out. This little thing took it out. Who knows how many other good things it has hidden away. Long Fei took it and sized it up. He couldn't be sure that it was the serpent fruit. It was even bigger than the one he saw in Gu Qisha's hands. Your Highness, you should keep it. I'm afraid the other 2 herbs will be hard to find. Instead of finding mute granny, they'd found the herbs first. Han Yunqing was too weak to keep the serpent fruit safe. Long Fei silently tucked it into his sleeve without a word. His eyes flashed coldly. Gu Qi Sha, your lordship will definitely play with you this time. As they spoke, Chu Shifeng rushed in. Your Highness, something big's happened. Long Fei hated it when his subordinates were all flustered. He asked unhappily, how big of a matter is it? Something's happened to the crown prince. Chu Shifeng gasped for breath. Long Fei didn't take it to heart. The crown prince was a man who knew how to adapt to circumstances. Judging from the current situation, he hadn't done anything out of line, so Emperor Tianhui wouldn't do anything to him. The best way to deal with father and son was to work together. What's wrong? Han Yunqing asked curiously. The emperor's betrothed him to Mu Luiyue from the general's estate. Chu Shifeng said seriously. Han Yunqing gave a start at his words. Mu Luiyue. If Chu Shifeng hadn't mentioned her, she'd almost forgotten about the girl. This girl used to be Princess Changping's best friend and had been arrogant for a while. Later, she lost a bet with Han Yunqing and didn't fulfill her end of the bargain, so her reputation was ruined and she didn't dare to leave her house. Back then, it was her older brother, Mu Qingguo, who stripped naked and ran a lap around the streets for her. No matter how good her background was, a woman like her would never marry into a good family. Noble and prestigious clans looked for a daughter-in-law and marrying off their daughters. Marrying off a daughter might depend on her family background, but a daughter-in-law's reputation and character were more important. The crown prince would actually marry a woman like this? No, to be more precise, Tianning's imperial clan would actually accept a woman like this? Han Yunqing couldn't believe it. Without a doubt, this was beyond Long Fei-Ye's expectations as well. Cold, he asked, what does General Mu mean by this? The news just came from the palace. The imperial edict should have just reached the general's estate by now, Chu Shifeng replied honestly. That's right, your highness. A few days ago, Chu Shifeng and I saw the crown prince go to the general's estate with Mu Qingguo. Han Yunqing would rather believe that it was Crown Prince Long Tianma who sought out Mu Qingguo of his own accord than Mu Qingguo seeking out the crown prince for the sake of military provisions. The imperial uncle's estate behind the crown prince truly had the power to provide Mu Qingguo with military provisions and provisions. Tianhui's deadline for Mu Qingguo's death is up, isn't it? Long Fei asked. It wasn't that he'd forgotten, but that as he saw it, Emperor Tianhui wouldn't really do anything to Mu Qingguo under these circumstances. He'd rather rope in the general's estate. It arrived 2 days ago, but I haven't seen Emperor Tianhui do anything to Mu Qingguo yet. Chu Shifeng said. No matter what, Emperor Tianhui's betrothal was a way to rope in Mu Qingguo. Now it all depended on old General Mu's intentions. Once the general's estate and the imperial uncle's estate stood together, they'd be a huge threat to Long Fei. For now, they could only wait and see how things played out. A few more days passed before Tang Li finally arrived. He was travel-worn, but still dressed in bridegroom's robes. Heaven knows what kind of life or death escape he'd experienced. He didn't even see Han Yunqing when he entered the gates before Long Fei pulled him away. To Medicine Ghost Valley. Chapter 349. Tang Li's hair was disheveled, and his wedding robes were in tatters. He hadn't even caught his breath before Long Fei dragged him out of the Duke of Qin's estate. Wait, fine, he'd better catch his breath before speaking. He'd fled on the way to the bridegroom's wedding by following Long Fei-Ye's route. Everything had gone smoothly, but he'd still been ambushed, not by the Tang clan, but by the bride's side of the family. His father had told him that the woman he was marrying came from a powerful family, but he'd never taken that to heart. He'd never even heard of the other party's background or the bride's identity. Even now, He was still unclear. But after being ambushed, he was truly curious about the other party's origins. They were too powerful. 50 top-notch experts had attacked together, completely wiping out Long Fei Ye's men. He'd used up all of his pear blossom rain needles to escape the encirclement. Over the past few days, he'd forgotten about eating, drinking, shitting, and sleeping. All he knew was to run as fast as he could to avoid being caught. Even after entering Tianning's capital city gates, he was still on guard. Only at the Duke of Qin's estate did he dare to relax. After panting a few times, Tang Li was about to speak when his vision darkened and he fainted. The distance between the Tang clan and Tianning's capital city was enough to run 2 horses to death. It wasn't that he was weak, but that he'd exceeded his biological limits. Long Fei Yi couldn't help but knit his brows when he saw Tang Li faint. Useless thing. Despite his displeasure, Long Fei Yi still personally helped Tang Li back and settled him in a guest room. The last secret letter from the Tang clan said that Tang Li had run into an ambush on his way out, but didn't go into details. After waiting for a few days without receiving any follow-up letters, Long Fei Yi grew worried and sent out his guards to investigate. Before they returned, he'd already seen Tang Li return without any injuries, so Long Fei Yi had nothing to worry about. No matter what price he had to pay, as long as Tang Li successfully escaped from the marriage, he would not mind. This time, not only did he want to save Tang Li, but more importantly, he didn't want Han Yunqing to go to the Tang sect, so he sent a lot of people to rescue Tang Li. Tang Li slept for a day and a night. Long Fei Yi was worried and asked the imperial physician to check his pulse. Fortunately, he was just overly tired and nothing serious happened. Finally, he woke up at daybreak. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Long Fei Yi drinking tea alone by the window. Tang Li was sleepy and asked in a daze, "Brother, am I dreaming? Where's the torrential pear blossom needles?" Long Fei Yi asked. He had searched but could not find it. Tang Li felt wronged. "Bro, don't you care about what I've been through? Didn't you escape?" Long Fei retorted. "Aren't you curious about how I escaped?" Tang Li asked again. "It's good that you escaped," Long Fei Yi said. There was no follow-up letter, which meant that all the hidden guards had been killed. Who else could have ambushed Tang Li and killed all his hidden guards besides Tang Zijin and Aunt Ru, who knew his hidden guards very well? He had no interest in the Tang sect, especially Tang Zijin and Aunt Ru's matters. He only wanted results. Tang Li obviously knew Long Fei Ye's temper. He said faintly, "Bro, it wasn't my father or Aunt Ru. It was the woman's force. There were 50 first-class experts. I used up all the hidden weapons I had on me to escape." Long Fei Yi looked over at him. The woman sighed. "My father and Aunt Ru didn't expect the path you arranged. I don't know how the woman's group found out. It wasn't a coincidence. They had set up an ambush." Tang Li said seriously. "What's their background?" Long Fei Yi was serious now. "I don't know. I wanted to ask you." Tang Li was helpless. Long Fei Yi threw him a sharp look. He couldn't be bothered to say anything. If the groom didn't care who the bride was, why would he care? Fine, these 2 brothers didn't care about the marriage at all. No matter who he married, Tang Li was determined to run away from the marriage. The woman's side was so strong. Long Fei Yi would naturally send people to investigate. What about the pear blossom storm needles? Long Fei Yi was more concerned about this. "Didn't you say I used up all the hidden weapons on me?" Tang Li said timidly. "Including the pear blossom storm needles?" Long Fei Yi was surprised again. Tang Li didn't know why Long Fei Yi wanted him to bring the pear blossom storm needles. He only knew that Long Fei Yi had to use them. But now, from his reaction, it didn't seem that important anymore. "It seems like your fiancé's background is not small." Long Fei Yi was really curious now. As for Gu Qi Sha, he already had the other serpent fruit. He didn't have to worry about Gu Qi Sha's serpent fruit threatening him. He alone was more than enough to deal with Gu Qi Sha. He only wanted Tang Li to go with him because he wanted to kill Gu Qi Sha in one move. It didn't matter if he didn't have the pear blossom storm needles. He could slowly play with them. Seeing that Long Fei Yi didn't pursue the matter, Tang Li was 100 times more relieved. If Tang Zijin knew that Tang Li had used up the second most powerful treasure in the Tang sect to run away from the marriage, he would probably beat Tang Li to death. Tang Li told himself to never go back. It was too scary. Could it be someone from the City of Assassins? Long Fei Yi asked. Both the City of Daughters and Carefree City were cities of assassins. These two powers couldn't be underestimated. Long Fei Yi had always wanted to rope them in, but Long Fei Yi wasn't willing. I don't care who it is. I'm not going back. Tang Li got off the bed with a serious expression. Big brother, I've thought it through. From now on, I'll be following you. After this life and death struggle, Tang Li hated his father even more. His father wasn't really in a hurry to have a grandchild. He was just using his marriage to rope in powerful forces for the Tang sect. He began to suspect that his father and Aunt Ru weren't loyal to Long Fei Yi, but to their ambitions. Seeing that Long Fei Yi wasn't speaking, Tang Li lowered his voice. Big brother, I'll help you suppress the Shadow Clan's matter. During this time, Long Fei Yi had kept Han Yunqing by his side while doing his best to suppress the Shadow Clan's matter. He didn't want anyone to know, but he was also tracking down the movements of the other 7 noble families. Tang Li knew best what he wanted to do. He wanted the poison sect's power, but he also wanted to erase Han Yunqing's status as a member of Western Qin's imperial family. Long Fei Yi still didn't speak. He only gave Tang Li a cold look. Tang Li was amused. He'd been like this since he was young. Long Fei Yi's silence was tacit agreement. Before long, Han Yunqing heard the news and came over. No matter how Tang Li looked at Han Yunqing, he couldn't help but feel comfortable. He wanted nothing more than to find a woman he couldn't like. That way, his father and the others would die from anger. Did you succeed in running away from the marriage? Han Yunqing smiled. Zhao Mama had been the one to tell her. Tang Li didn't know how far Long Fei Yi and this woman had progressed while he was gone. He only grunted in response. It was best to be cautious. Your Highness, it's better to tear down 10 temples than ruin one marriage, Han Yunqing teased. She could guess that Long Fei Yi had saved her. His marriage isn't as important as a temple, Long Fei Yi said. Who's he marrying? Han Yunqing began to gossip. Ask him. Long Fei Yi was still cold. Tang Li was suspicious. He felt that there was something more between the two of them. Long Fei Yi hadn't changed much. He was still cold and indifferent. However, Han Yunqing was much more relaxed than before. He remembered that this woman would more or less retreat in front of Long Fei Yi. He had never seen her joke around. If it wasn't for something important, she wouldn't talk to Long Fei Yi. The two of them seemed to live in 2 different worlds. Now, they seemed to be living in the same world. Tang Li couldn't figure it out. Had he missed something? Hey, who are you marrying? Han Yunqing asked again. Tang Li cleverly avoided the question. Don't mention marriage in front of this young master again. With Han Yunqing around, he didn't bring up the matter of going to the Medicine Ghost Valley. When night fell, Long Fei Yi set off for the Medicine Ghost Valley alone. A few days later, Long Fei Yi appeared in Gu Qi Sha's courtyard. To his surprise, Gu Qi Sha wasn't there. This prince will wait. Long Fei Yi's words scared the old steward so much that he shut the door. This Duke of Qin was very domineering, but Pill Fiend had a venomous tongue. A single word from him was enough to ignite the Duke of Qin's anger. Even the old steward thought that Pill Fiend was courting death. Fortunately, Pill Fiend had the serpent fruit to restrain Long Fei Yi. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Long Fei Yi really did wait. Now that this great Buddha had come to the temple, the old steward didn't delay any further and immediately sent a messenger pigeon to Guqi Sha. The next day, Guqi Sha returned. He was still wearing his black robes, and his smile was strange. Hee, Your Highness Duke of Qin, could it be that you've thought things through? Did you come here just to be kicked by the old man? After 2 rounds of fighting, Guqi Sha had even broken the precious serpent fruit into 2 pieces to threaten Long Fei Yi. From the beginning to the end, it was all for the sake of kicking him. Before Long Fei Yi could answer, Guqi Sha chuckled and said, Your Highness Duke of Qin, now that the serpent fruit has been split into 2 pieces, which piece do you want? Everyone present knew that only when both pieces of the serpent fruit were used together would it have any effect. Guqi Sha was openly provoking him. Long Fei's eyes flashed with cold light. Even the old steward on the side felt like he was about to freeze, but Guqi Sha was still smiling brightly. Of course, if Your Highness Duke of Qin is willing to take 2 kicks from this old man, then this old man will bestow these 2 pieces of serpent fruit to you. When he heard this, the old steward couldn't help but shudder. Could it be that his master and His Highness Duke of Qin had some sort of irreconcilable enmity? Otherwise, why would he provoke and humiliate him like this? Finally, Long Fei Yi opened his mouth. 2 kicks, is it? If Your Highness Duke of Qin likes it, 3 or 4 kicks won't be a problem. Guqi Sha was very generous. Long Fei Yi didn't answer. Instead, he suddenly leapt into the air and viciously kicked at Guqi Sha with a shadowless kick. His momentum was so swift and fierce that it caused the surrounding air to ripple. Guqi Sha had exchanged blows with him twice before, so he was still on guard. He kept retreating until his back was against the door. There was still time to escape, but Guqi Sha didn't. Instead, he took out a piece of the serpent fruit from his sleeve and said seriously, If Your Highness Duke of Qin wants to kick this old man 4 times, he didn't finish his sentence and instead pretended to break the serpent fruit into 2 pieces. Chapter 350. Guqi Sha pretended to break the serpent fruit into 2 halves, thinking that Long Fei Yi would stop. However, not only did Long Fei Yi not stop, but he also kicked out with his other leg. Guqi Sha was dumbfounded at that moment. Long Fei Yi kicked Guqi Sha's abdomen with both legs and borrowed the momentum to do a somersault in the air before landing in front of Guqi Sha. Time seemed to have stopped at that moment. The entire courtyard was silent and still. Guqi Sha stood motionless on the spot, but soon, the serpent fruit in his hand slowly slid to the ground and shattered into pieces. Long Fei Yi did not even look at it, instead, he stared at Guqi Sha with a cold gaze. Soon after, the door behind Guqi Sha exploded into pieces with a loud bang. Guqi Sha slowly lowered his head to look at the serpent fruit on the ground, unable to believe what he had just seen. Long Fei Yi, you, before he could finish speaking, he spat out a mouthful of blood, drenching his black mask. Long Fei Yi was not threatened by the serpent fruit. Did he not want the serpent fruit anymore? How could this be? Guqi Sha felt the blood in his body go haywire. Soon, he spat out another mouthful of blood. Long Fei Yi's 2 kicks were definitely not for nothing. Finally, Guqi Sha could not hold on any longer and fell to one knee. At that moment, Guqi Sha almost couldn't stop himself from throwing out the medicinal seed. One had to know that if he had planted it anywhere on Long Fei Yi's body, it would have taken his life. However, in the end, he did not make a move. Long Fei Yi bowed and lifted Guqi Sha's mask, revealing a face that could not be any paler, with blood smearing the corners of his mouth. Just as Long Fei Yi had expected, this face was very young, but he did not recognize it. However, Long Fei Yi still sized him up before standing up. There are still 2 more kicks. Elder, you can use 2 more medicinal herbs to exchange for them. Whether you want to live or not, it's up to you. He was high and mighty, and his voice was as cold as ice. It was as if he was the highest king in the world, and no one could offend him. Gu Qisha had been defeated, but he didn't look like a loser at all. Instead, his bloodied lips were curled into a cynical smile. If your Highness Duke of Qin wants 2 medicines, just tell me. This old man is very afraid of dying. Bear Chuan and Panoptic Red Lotus. Long Fei Yi was very straightforward. He didn't come to the Medicine Ghost Valley just for revenge. In this world, there were probably no more than 3 people who were better at finding medicine than Pill Fiend. If Pill Fiend couldn't find him, then he couldn't find him either. The Bear Chuan and the Panoptic Red Lotus. TSK, Your Highness Duke of Qin sure has good taste. Gu Qisha sighed. I'll give you 1 year. Long Fei Yi said. Gu Qisha, on the other hand, didn't seem to mind. Instead, he asked curiously, Serpent Fruit, Bear Chuan, and Panoptic Red Lotus? What kind of prescription is this? This is the first time this old man has heard of it. Long Fei Yi didn't answer. Instead, he warned, don't go back on your word, unless you have less than a year to live. Ha, Your Highness Duke of Qin also knows that these medicines aren't easy to find. Long Fei Yi's 1 year wasn't a very long time. He might not be able to find these 2 medicines even after 3 years. What do you think? Long Fei Yi wanted a definite answer. Did this old man even have the chance to say no? Gu Qisha laughed. Long Fei Yi glanced at him, then turned to leave without another word. Your Highness Duke of Qin, let's chat for a bit longer. Hey, don't you want the serpent fruit anymore? Long Fei Yi ignored Gu Qisha's shouts and disappeared through the door without looking back. Once he was sure that Long Fei Yi had left, Gu Qisha took 2 steps back and almost fell to the ground. He clutched his abdomen with a frown. It really fucking hurts. Long Fei Yi, you'd better not fall into my hands one day. Otherwise, I'll make sure you suffer a fate worse than death. At that moment, the frightened old steward hurried over. Master, are you alright? Do I look alright? The smile on Gu Qisha's face had long since disappeared. He was in a very bad mood. The old steward shut his mouth, not daring to utter another word. Gu Qisha looked at the shattered serpent fruit on the floor and muttered, which damned bastard gave him the serpent fruit? Long Fei Yi had personally made 2 trips here just for the serpent fruit. He couldn't have just given it up, so he must have already obtained it. Gu Qisha hatefully thought to himself, if I find out who gave Long Fei Yi the serpent fruit, I'll definitely make that bastard suffer a fate worse than death. That bastard ruined my plans. When the old butler saw the blood flowing from the corner of his master's mouth, he couldn't help but say, Master, let's treat your wounds first. I won't die. Gu Qisha said in annoyance. He turned around and casually threw a human skin mask at the old steward's face. Even a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. I, Gu Qisha, have plenty of human skin masks. There's no way you'll be able to see my true appearance. Long Fei Yi, you're looking for medicine behind Han Yunqing's back, aren't you? I'll definitely find it for you as soon as possible. Han Yunqing really didn't know that Long Fei Yi had been looking for medicine all this time. During Long Fei Yi's absence, Han Yunqing had frequently harassed Tang Li, asking him for hidden weapons. Although Tang Li had used up all of his weapons, it was still easy for him to secretly transfer them from the Tang clan. Who told him to have a mother who doted on him so much? A few days later, Long Fei Yi returned from Medicine Ghost Valley. Chu Shifeng immediately reported the bad news. General Mu and Mu Qingguo had received an imperial edict. Mu Luyue and Crown Prince Long Tianma's wedding was set for the end of the month. Has General Mu gone to the palace to see the emperor recently? Long Feiyi asked. Chu Shifeng had investigated thoroughly. He hasn't. That night, esteemed Wang Fei and this subordinate ran into the crown prince and Mu Qingguo at the back door of the general's estate. Perhaps the Mu family was the one who asked for the wedding. Mu Qingguo couldn't complete Emperor Tianhui's mission, so only His Highness Duke of Qin and the imperial uncle had the skills to help him. Mu Qingguo had been rejected by His Highness Duke of Qin, so he could only seek out the imperial uncle. Long Feiyi didn't speak, but Han Yunqing immediately denied Chu Shifeng's guess. Mu Qingguo isn't that kind of person. Moreover, His Majesty might not dare to do anything to the general's estate at a time like this. Long Feiyi asked mildly, so you think that Emperor Tianhui is trying to rope in General Mu's estate on his own accord? Still, Han Yunqing denied it. No, I think it's the Crown Prince who's taking the initiative. The Crown Prince is quite a character. Long Feiyi nodded with amusement. He suddenly realized that this woman wasn't just clever in small matters, but in big ones. General Mu had indeed given her a gift at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet, but it was nothing special. General Mu had lived through 2 generations of emperors, but he'd always taken a neutral stance in the struggle for the throne. He was neither servile nor overbearing, but rather independent and neither too conservative nor too radical. After all, anyone who was independent would always have some sort of bargaining chip in their hands. If Emperor Tianhui could rope in General Mu's estate, then he wouldn't have tried to pressure Mu Qingguo with the military pay and provisions. In other words, it was the Crown Prince who'd roped in General Mu's estate this time. For the sake of dealing with Long Feiyi, Emperor Tianhui had no choice but to let the Crown Prince's power grow. The only thing Long Feiyi didn't understand was how the Crown Prince and the imperial uncle's estate had managed to convince General Mu. There's definitely something fishy about this. Could it be that the Crown Prince has some sort of leverage over Mu Qingguo? Han Yunqing couldn't figure it out either. She secretly wondered if she should go see Mu Qingguo. The wedding was at the end of the month, which was only 10 days away. Han Yunqing hesitated for a few days before she finally invited Mu Qingguo out to a private room in a tea house. Han Yunqing hadn't forgotten Mu Qingguo's expression of righteous indignation when he found out that the imperial uncle's estate had embezzled all of the disaster relief supplies. She had always believed that Mu Qingguo was the most magnanimous person in the imperial court. His honest and upright eyes wouldn't lie. Before Mu Qingguo arrived, Han Yunqing had already thought of countless possibilities. But Mu Qingguo gave her an answer she never expected. Esteemed Wang Fei, my little sister's getting on in years. Mu Yoyue's reputation had been ruined. If she wanted to marry, she'd have to marry into a family beneath the general's estate. But how could she accept Mu Yoyue's attitude? She was already being mocked by others. If she married into an ordinary family, wouldn't she become a laughingstock? Han Yunqing knew that Mu Qingguo and General Mu both loved Mu Luyue very much. She knitted her brows and shook her head. Do you think that Mu Luyue will be happy if she marries the Crown Prince? She'll become nothing more than a tool. Esteemed Wang Fei, Luyue only wants her reputation. At least she'll be happier than marrying beneath her status. Mu Qingguo indifferently said. So, for the sake of Mu Yoyue's so-called happiness, you're willing to wallow in the mire with the imperial uncle's estate? Han Yunqing angrily said. Mu Qingguo didn't reply and avoided Han Yunqing's gaze. Han Yunqing angrily said, You. Should she regret saving the wrong person, making the wrong choice, or saving the wrong person? Or should she sigh at how quickly people changed? Once upon a time, this upright young general in front of her had earnestly said to her, Esteemed Wang Fei, if there's anything this official can do for you in the future, please don't hesitate to ask. But now, he was standing on the opposite side of the Duke of Qin's estate. Mu Qingguo lowered his head and didn't say a word. Since he'd made his choice, Han Yunqing would rather he argue with her in a righteous manner. But he kept his head bowed and didn't say a word, like a coward. Han Yunqing couldn't help but look down on him. Young general, just pretend that this Wang Fei never came today. Han Yunqing was extremely disappointed. She got up and left first. Although she was very surprised, when she thought about how Mu Qinggu was willing to take off his clothes and run around for Mu Luiyue, it wasn't impossible for him to do this now. After a long time, Mu Qinggu slowly raised his head to look out the window. He watched Han Yunqing's figure disappear into the distance before exhaling. Esteemed Wang Fei, I hope Qinggu can help you one day, he muttered to himself, his voice so low that even he couldn't hear himself. Nobody knew that the cooperation with the Crown Prince had caused a huge uproar in the general's estate. That day, the Crown Prince had found him of his own accord and expressed his intentions to rope him in. He was willing to gather money and grain for him. He knew his chance had come, so he agreed without a second thought. For one thing, he wanted to take back the grain that belonged to the common people. For another, he wanted to help esteemed Wang Fei one day and repay her for saving his life. Actually, he'd given the Crown Prince the idea of marrying Luiyue. The Crown Prince had convinced Emperor Tianhui to grant the marriage, while he used Luiyue's vanity to convince his father. For this reason, Luiyue had caused a ruckus for 3 days and 3 nights. She'd even threatened to commit suicide to force his father to accept the marriage. Once the imperial edict arrived, his mentally and physically exhausted father had no other choice. The end of the month would arrive soon. He only hoped that everything would go smoothly. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.